Hey, before we jump in, a quick heads up about the audio. About an hour before recording, I accidentally put my phone through a spin cycle in the washing machine. Miraculously, it has survived, but the microphones unfortunately didn't connect properly afterwards, so today's episode is running on backup audio. Huge thanks to Amanda for being such an amazing guest, and I really hope I haven't done her a disservice with my laundry-based chaos. Enjoy the conversation.
Maybe this is just the idea that I have with tattoos, but like, there's a big worry about it being a permanent thing on you.
Yeah.
But I also, in a sense, I quite like when the control is taken away from me. I'm a bit like, when you finish an exam, there are some people who hand in their exam paper.
Yeah.
And that's when the stress starts. And they're just like, oh my God, I can't think of anything except results. And I was always the opposite. I was like, as soon as I handed in the paper, I was huge relief, couldn't care less, didn't even think about results because that's when the control's not mine.
Yeah.
And I feel like, especially with me asking my friends if they would get me, or like going to an artist and saying, just tattoo something cool, when they've got the control, it's almost a relief, I think. Yeah, I think two different types of people go, but that's definitely my outlook. As soon as someone else who is more qualified than me has the control, I'm like quite happy.
That's good. Cool. I was actually going to ask you because I mean it was going to filter on from a bunch of stuff, but I can ask you just now. Like, so kind of to come off the bat with the first question being this makes sense because of what we're talking about. But I wasn't going to ask it first. Mm-hmm. But it was just to do with like stress and worry. I think it was kind of more going to tie in with the uncertainty of change, like moving from UK to Canada and Canada now back to the UK. I was going to ask, like, how do you like manage and process your stress, like with your kind of past, present, and future? But it sounds like you maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. Like the idea of managing stress, because it sounds like you've done it, and I feel like it's a constant process. It's not like you've managed it; you're constantly managing it.
Yeah.
I think, especially being at the point where I'm like about to go home, and it's probably going to be permanent this time. I think when you live in two places, or when your heart is split between two places, what's really weird is that neither place feels wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think every time I've gone back and forth, it's felt equally painful leaving here as it does leaving there. And it's always for different reasons. You're leaving the UK, you're leaving your family, you're leaving everyone that you've grown up with, everyone you know. And that is like gut-wrenching. And then also equally you've created a life out here, and the life out here is one that I have always preferred. So I'm back in the UK. And so leaving that and leaving the stability of having like a routine is equally as gut-wrenching. And I think when you've got that like crossroads, what's kind of funny is that like no answer in terms of where you settle is wrong. I think going between one and the other, two that you like equally love, like the things that you love can kind of hurt you in the same way. I don't know. I don't think I'm making a lot of sense here, but I think you love the UK. Like I love the UK. I love the people that I know out there, and choosing to stay back there, choosing to create a life there is not wrong, but it's still painful leaving here, and like vice versa, both are the same. So managing stress, I think it's like just reminding myself that like neither answer is wrong. I can definitely love aspects of both of them. And if I choose to stay in one and I miss the other one, like the same is going to be true whichever one I pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a very rambling way.
No, not at all. But do you feel like do you have any fear? So you were saying, do you have any fear with regards to the uncertainty of making the move? Like I know you're saying, it kind of sounds like you're saying like you love Canada and you love the UK. So as much as gutting to leave one, you're going somewhere that you want to be. But even with that, do you have like a sense of fear with regards to like, is it the right thing?
It's
Am I right saying that? So you're obviously not voting for PR.
No.
So was the decision kind of taken out of your hands to move?
Yeah. At this point,
Agree.
yeah, I decided not to go for PR again because I think the last time I left the UK, it was just gutting to leave it. And so I thought, it was something that Gord said to me when I left Norway. He was like, if you've got an itch and you've got to scratch it, you've got that feeling that you've maybe should be going back, then like, you're never going to satisfy that by being out here.
Yeah.
I think I'm definitely concerned because the thing that is such a draw for being here is the lifestyle. And it's really hard to emulate that lifestyle when you're back in the UK. I think we all know that, being from both. And so the fear of like, is that going to be something that I miss so much that it feels insurmountable is actually not a question I can answer until I'm back there. So I'm definitely concerned about that. And then you've got that worry of, the people that I'm going back to, is that going to be enough to kind of fill that void of the outdoor lifestyle that you get out here? I think it's one of those decisions where it's like, it's really taken out of your hands. You won't know until you're back there. And when I'm back there, I need to keep reminding myself that like, yes, I might miss the lifestyle, but I went back for the people that I miss. And so I've got to actually make an effort rather than just having my brain back here the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to commit to the decision that you make. Yeah, I think with that quite a lot as well with regards to exactly what you said, where you have certain things here that you don't have at home, but you have things, well, and by home I mean the UK, and in the UK you have things there that you don't have here.
Mm-hmm.
And I have over the period of time that I've been here, have gone back and forth quite a lot about coming and going, like to stay here, to go home. And I always think, exactly what you just said there, where the things that I miss here would be the things I would have at home, but then the things I have here would be the things I probably miss.
Yeah.
I mean, Scotland's maybe slightly different, like you go up to the Highlands, or is there anywhere that you want to go in the UK?
I was kind of thinking about that.
Yeah.
I was thinking about just a national park, like something like the Peak District would be quite cool. Somewhere like, I've never lived in Scotland, but that seems to be like the Canada of, I don't know. Where else? Looking somewhere up in Leeds, which is up north, like the Yorkshire Dales would be kind of cool. Not London. That's pretty much my criteria, as long as it's not London.
Are you from London?
Yeah.
Right. Where in London?
Wembley Park.
Okay, sweet. Right. Okay, so
really close to the football stadium.
Yeah.
And I used to love London. I used to say it was the best place in the world because I've always said London is really good if you're disorganized. Because if you live somewhere remote and say you're growing up and you don't drive yet,
yeah.
If you've got like one bus that goes through town once a day and you miss it, then like, what are you supposed to do? In London, if you want to see your friends, there's like tubes and buses and everything that go every minute, every 30 seconds, and so you can make these really spur of the moment decisions, and you end up gaining quite a lot of independence from a young age just because you have that freedom of mobility, which is really nice. And again, if you're disorganized, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be an option around there. So I used to love how close it brought me and my friends from a young age, because we, again, had that freedom. And I used to love how many options there were in London. But as soon as I started working in London, it was a really different story. I think the amount of options you have in London is really cool, but it demands a certain lifestyle, which is very expensive and very full on. And I think that when you get older and you just have a bit less energy after work, the need for the busyness isn't quite there. So yeah, I used to love London. I used to get really confused by people who didn't like cities. And then I came out here and was like, this is kind of better.
Yeah, how do you feel the adjustment from somewhere so busy to somewhere, I know Bath obviously gets busy in the peak seasons, but it's like a small mountain town.
Yeah.
How, was that quite a hard adjustment, or did you immediately?
It was an interesting adjustment in that I've never lived anywhere where you need a car. That was a really, really weird thing. And I've actually gone 5 years without having a car, but I've just noticed it. But I've never lived anywhere previously where if you don't have a car, you're really limited. So that was a bit of a weird one. I think people I'd known who lived in more remote areas growing up were saying that like not having a car made things quite difficult when they were younger. And I'd never really understood that. And then I came out here and was like, oh, there are like legit things you actually can't do if you don't have that transport. And I think the fact that the lifestyle out here, what I noticed in cities is that the lifestyle is very much moving from indoor space to indoor space.
Yeah.
And out here, it's completely the opposite. And that was, I guess, an adjustment, but a really cool one. Like, I didn't necessarily notice it until I got back to the UK. It was like, this is different, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, because I think with anytime I go back to a city, regardless of what city it is, it's usually you feel like you're spending. There's a lot of stuff to do, but it's a lot of indoor stuff, really, like restaurants, bars, pubs, like theatre, like comedy or whatever. But it's all. Obviously London has massive parks which you do go to, but yeah, it definitely feels like a lot of the stuff you're doing in places like London is a lot of indoor stuff.
Yeah. It's. I mean, it's you notice it with the outdoor gear that you have over here. Obviously, you need good outdoor gear when you're here, but the thing that I realize, and I constantly have to say to my students if they came from the UK, is that if you get cold when you're out here, that's not something you push through. Like you have to vocalize when you're cold, and you have to do something about it pretty instantly. Because when you're in a city, or even when you're in that lifestyle where you're moving from indoor space to indoor space, if you get really freezing on the like 20-minute walk between indoor spaces, it doesn't matter. So you build up this feeling that cold is just something that you push through and it's not dangerous. And that was a real switch in my brain when I came out here, of realizing that you're spending hours on end outside, and just pushing through it is going to lead you to a really dangerous spot. And I think that was what made me realize that when you're, again, the lifestyle I had in England, you'd never have to think about like it being a sort of dangerous situation if you just push through it. Yeah,
that's really true. And did you feel that, so when I go to London, which I did recently, I feel like I have and I mean in a very slight way, I have like a very baseline level of anxiety just with the sheer volume of people. Yeah. Do you have the opposite now that you're out here? Like, it's just so quiet out here, you know, at times I'm probably like, oh, it could be like, I could hang out with like a couple more people today.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't think I ever saw it as like an anxiety, but I think when I go back to London, it was a bit different when I was living there, but I think when I go back and I'm just visiting, or if I'm in a city, I get a little bit of a rush. Like I like the busyness because it feels familiar.
Yeah.
And out here, like it is busy enough out here that I haven't really felt like an anxiety in the opposite way. But sometimes when I go back to a city, I think I enjoy the feeling of rushing between places and kind of rushing in and amongst crowds and like being in quite a like busy, moving population. But again, that's just what I grew up with. I think I also weirdly have the benefit that I can, because I'm so small, I can walk through crowds without anyone really noticing.
Yeah.
So I think I have the weird benefit of like being kind of invisible within that crowd and being able to just like soak it in. And yeah, I'd never really noticed that, but I think that like when I'm walking with someone who is a little bit taller than me or just a bit bigger and is constantly getting shoved into, I'd always find the like gaps that that's too funny.
That's so true. Yeah. I mean, you're obviously kind of making a joke, but yeah, it makes sense. Like a bigger person would have to expend more energy getting through crowds, whereas you're just like ducking and diving. That's really funny. I never thought of that.
Yeah, I hadn't really clocked it until I was with someone who was bigger than me and was getting more stressed. And I was like, this is actually, it's easier just not being noticed. So I really have the advantage.
Yeah, that's so funny. I would never have thought that. Yeah, I think, that's really funny. I never would have thought that. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So you grew up in London, and then, so you did, and then you were talking about your tattoos, so you got your mountain big tattoo. So you got into publishing, am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
Right, so.
Yeah.
Like, two questions, I guess. How did you get into it? And what is like publishing in the sense of like, I always think when I think of publishing, I think you publish a book, but I assume there's way more to it than that.
To be honest, in its simplest form, that is kind of exactly what it is. I think, so I did English at university. I did it for my undergrad and then I did it for my master's. And publishing seemed like a really natural move from that. So I think when you go to university and you do something like law or medicine, it's really obvious, or engineering, it's obvious what the trajectory is going to be. If you do something humanities-based like English or history or something like that, it's a lot less clear what you're going to do unless you go and do a PhD. And so publishing, to me, seemed like kind of an obvious move from there. And publishing, it kind of depends what department you're in, but essentially what a publisher will do is they will start off talking to an author, they will bring in designers, they'll bring in editors, they'll have the original manuscript, whatever it is, and then they will work together within that department to create the files, create like a PDF of what the book's going to look like. And before that, you've got sales departments and kind of a bigger picture, just getting the author on board. But then once you've got files, that's when the production department comes in. And that was what I did, which is that you've got these finished files, they've all been edited and designed and everything.
And by files, you mean like the written work, like written pages?
Yeah, so it's the book, but in a PDF form. And then what we would do is we would talk to the printer about this. Now, my first job, I worked in academic publishing and I worked in something called print on demand, which is basically when you've got books that are that they're very close to going out to print because they just haven't been sold, they haven't been bought. Academic publishing has got, like, people have written books on everything. So they have so many books in the background and they're always on really niche topics. So it's not that uncommon to have a book that, like, not many people are buying. And instead of putting it out of print, what we did is put them on print on demand, which is basically you're printing them digitally and you're printing them like as cheaply as possible so that we can still prolong the life of the book. We went to a printer and the print on demand machine compared to the other printers was really small because it just has the capacity to be able to churn out books super, super quickly. And again, it would prolong the life of the book. Now, within that, you've got certain parameters because they're being printed cheaply. It usually has to be something like a trade book, like this one, which is a really standard print size. It's got a very simple gloss cover, black and white, cheap paper. This is probably 80 GSM, maybe a bit thicker. Something really simple like that. Yeah, absolutely perfect for that. If you've got something like a medical textbook where it's got plate, I can't remember what it's called, plate files was the way that we described it, but it's got like, when you're flipping through a textbook and it's got like a section in the middle that's got like really glossy paper and it's got all these pictures in it. Something like a medical book will have tons of those, or it'll just be on more expensive paper because the color in a textbook is incredibly important. If I'm printing a medical textbook and I'm trying to write a section on like jaundice, if the color isn't right, and I've got a student looking at it saying, okay, I'm supposed to be looking at skin that has become yellow, but it's kind of coming out orange, then like, that's not really a usable book. So something like a medical textbook, we generally couldn't do print on demand because we just couldn't, that's a lot more expensive. We couldn't print it to the quality we needed. So we had certain parameters, but we were able to prolong the life of certain textbooks or just certain academic books that weren't really getting sold. So that was my first job. And then, so I was kind of production in that department. And then when I moved to children's publishing, I was still working in production. But what we did is we would take the files that had been, again, designed by the editor and the designer, and then we would send them to the printer in China. And most of our printers were in China. We had one or two in Italy, I think. But yeah, what we would do is we would go to the printer and we'd say, here's the design of the book. What can you do with this? What's the best price we can get from it? And what's the schedule that we can work to? That was usually the majority of what I did. I worked in reprints. So generally we'd already done like a lot of the work with the printer and we were just saying, we've got files again. Can we churn out even more copies of this. If you're going for a first printing of the book, you go to them and you say, this book needs a pop-out section or something. Can you send me back like a blank copy of what that book should look like? You get that approved, or you don't get approved, you get it changed. And then once everything's been approved, you get like a blank copy saying here's pretty much what it'll look like once the full book's been done. And then from there, once that's been approved, then you can start to get a full print schedule, and then you can get like a full print run. Children's publishing is a lot more complicated than academic publishing. Like something like print on demand, like I did with very simple books. With children's publishing, because everything is so vibrant, because the paper tends to be a lot thicker, it tends to be better quality, because we're marketing at kids who are sometimes like less than 3 years old. They're not reading the books, they're treating it like a toy, so you have to safety test them. Like there's a lot more that goes into it. So with it being more complicated and with more money being spent, the production side of it was actually quite intensive, I think. And then, from there, we're sort of the final step, because from there, once we've got everything approved on the production side, at that point, it just hits the bookshelves.
Yeah.
And start getting sold.
That's crazy. You just said a whole bunch of stuff there that I was like...
I know.
No, and I mean, in a good sense, I've honestly thought, there's a couple of things you said that I've thought about where like, I've read books that I've really, it'll be like, look at the picture, and the picture's really shit. Like, it'll be like black, it'll be like on, not like glossy paper, it'll be on like just what I would think of as standard tree paper, if you will.
Yeah.
And the picture's like black and white. I think it was like a medical, maybe not a medical book necessarily, but it was like an injury book or something, rehab book. And the picture was really shit.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at it and I was like,
it's really interesting because it's what we call uncoated paper. And if you think about it, the reason that it's really shit is because the ink literally sinks into it.
Uh-huh.
So with the ink sinking into it, it's a little bit like, I guess, a tattoo. It's going to bleed. And so, if you look at it and you think the picture's shit, it's because they've probably chosen the cheapest paper that they can. And on the other hand, if you go for a coated paper, it's going to sit on top. And so it's going to be sharper. It's going to be much easier to get what you need from that picture. Again, something like a medical textbook, you can't afford to have those pictures be really shit. And it's funny that like probably in the design process or in the production process, they would have thought this is cheaper, we're going to do it. But then you read it and that was one of the first impressions you got. So it's those little details are quite important.
It's even in regards to who proofreads it, because not all the time, but I do read quite a lot, and I would say not fairly regularly, but at least once a year, I feel like you read a book and there's like a word that's like doubled or totally wrong. Like, does someone literally just sit and read it in entirety?
So I never worked on the editorial side of things. I kind of wish that I had, but I think that actually comes it comes well before production gets the book. But the editorial, that will even be an author with a copy editor. So, and that's a totally different side of things. That will be before you get to the publishing side, because the editor on the publishing side is still that kind of final look. And a lot of the time they're also, with kids' books, they're looking at the layout. But the author should be working with a copy editor to try and make sure that those mistakes don't happen. And they still do.
Yeah.
I used to do a little bit of proofing, but I never worked beyond the addresses and like the publication information. The actual book came well before I came into the picture.
Yeah, because I was even going to suggest ChatGPT there, but I've obviously ChatGPT'd a bunch of stuff, and you read it back, and sometimes it's amazing, and then other times the way either it reads or it just has information that doesn't make sense. And I'm assuming if you read like, I mean, books can be like, what, like anywhere between like 200 to 600 pages long, especially if it's like a medical thing. I don't think people would trust a computer just to let it out.
No, and we used to try and use a script to kind of correct the copyright information that we had, and it really, really didn't work for us. The computer was really good at kind of generating stuff quickly, but then we'd always have to go back and correct it. It wasn't that good at looking at like old copyright information and stuff. Like, I can't remember this that well, but it was good at it was good at correcting it if all the information it was getting was the same. But if there was, say, a really old book and the copyright page looked a little bit different, it really could not function.
Yeah. And did you grow up loving books?
I did. It was part of the reason that I did the Masters in Children's Literature.
Yeah.
Because I did my undergrad in English literature, and a lot of it was just that my favourite subject at school was English, so I really enjoyed it. But then when you're doing a university course, and I feel like everyone is kind of along the same lines as me, you don't love it the entire course. I'd say you hit a point when you're like, I've kind of fallen out of love with this. And during my undergrad, I had to read stuff that I don't think I'd choose to read any of the books that after first year, I don't think I would have chosen to read any of the books that I had to study. And when it came to children's literature, I was like, what's really nice about children's literature is that anyone who still loves reading has grown up loving reading, usually. And so there's something really universal about when you're talking about, I don't know, but Swallows and Amazons, or I read The Family at One End Street, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, like all those books that kind of bring back these memories when you're like, yeah, I used to love that. And when people talk about how much they loved reading growing up, it always stems from, I loved this growing up, I loved this one growing up. And so that was sort of where it came from with the Masters in Children's Literature, that I wanted to be able to do the same thing I was doing studying, but with books that I knew I enjoyed. And I really loved reading when I was younger, rather than here's an epic poem that I know you'd never pick.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. I think my two sisters have got babies now, and they obviously have a lot of baby books. Makes sense. And it's quite cool just to see their little brains taking over with them.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a tangent here, but so one of my sisters lives in Spain. Her baby's Spanish, because they grew up there. So there's lots of like baby Spanish books, and I've been trying to learn Spanish for like quite a while now. And I was like, I wonder if that would be the easiest way to do it. Even as me as a grown man, I was like, I wonder if I could just get Spanish baby books and start like reading them. And then obviously I was more actually saying to Alice, I was like, I wonder if you could just send them to me. But it did kind of make me think. So I was like, if they learn that way, surely that's the easiest way to learn. I know as a grown adult, there's probably way better ways of doing it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a really interesting one. Because that is how you learn organically. Obviously, I don't know very much about child development. What I think is fun about kids' books is that generally they're designed for a dual readership, because you know that a baby is not going to be sitting there reading it by itself. So a lot of the time they're designed for the adult reading and also the baby learning and the baby reading. And then you take away that dual readership when you get to books that people can just read by themselves.
Have you seen the baby, again, another tangent here, but have you seen the Bluey thing on Netflix?
No.
So there's this kids TV show called Bluey. It's this Australian cartoon show where it's like a family of dogs, and it's all cartoons. But you talk about dual readership there. The Bluey is scripted in such a way that it's a child's TV program, but it's really funny for adults. So they have like a whole episode where like the mom and dad are hungover, which you as an adult can understand when you're like watching it.
Yeah.
But the kid just thinks that they're really tired and stuff. So it's quite funny I think that's why it's so popular to my understanding, is because it has exactly what you said there. It has that dual audience.
Yeah.
The adult and the...
And it kind of reminds me, because when you've got, I don't have kids, but I assume when you've got a kid, you're not going to buy them a book that you think is bad, you know? And especially working in publishing, when I was reprinting a lot of the books, I was reprinting the same one over and over again. And I remember the ones that would really cause me issues, a couple of them I read, because I was like, what's the big deal about these? I need to know. And one of them, I remember reading it and being like, this is boring. This is really shit. Like, I don't think it's that great. But then there was one that I read where I was like, this book is causing me so many problems. It's such a complicated one, but it's a really, really good one. And it's one that I would probably pick for my kids because I think it's great. And you're not going to go for the one that you think is like really bad. I remember like my parents telling me that they loved watching Sesame Street with us because they loved it. I don't remember it, but they absolutely loved it. So that was the one they pick. So it makes a lot of sense that like when you're creating that kind of content, you're trying to do it to bring the adult and the kid together so that everyone can enjoy it, rather than just being like, okay, here's a show that my kid likes, I'm going to go off and do something else because I don't want to watch it.
Yeah, so if you're reading a book to your kid every single night, you're going to want to read the one that gives you some sense of like entertainment, even if it's the same story. Yeah, if you read something boring every night, you're just not going to read it.
Yeah, exactly. There again, this book that got really popular, I was like, I don't know why people buy it. I think it's really boring.
Do you know why it got popular then? Like, was it like?
It's actually quite the book. The book is called "I Love You to the Moon and Back." This is the thing. I say it, and everyone knows about it. And we sold it. It was one of the ones where we hit like 1 million copies with it or something. I was reprinting like 100,000 copies of it at a time. And I think it's a board book, so it's one aimed at really young kids. But I think it's also one that, like, you know, when you're in the supermarket and you're checking out, and there's all the like lines of candy. And you're like, oh, just grab one.
Yeah.
It was one that I think they used to have basically really close to the checkout. And
the book, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a really easy one to be like, oh, just grab that as well. And it's also really recognizable because of that. And I think that was a lot of it, that it would be one of those ones that was like marketed really well and placed really well, and then it just gained popularity because of that.
So see, with books, when it comes to, so you were saying you had a book there that sold a million copies, or that one specifically. What is a lot of copies in a book? Because sometimes the two things that I think that I wanted to ask you about, that I think as someone who reads a lot, I'm like, I don't even know if this is something to brag about. And usually it is like X amount of copies sold worldwide, and it's on the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing or reading this thing that said that the New York Times bestseller list can be manipulated in a certain way, because it's still like whoever does it is still like their opinion on what they think is good.
Yeah.
So like, what is a lot of copy? Like, what would you be like, oh, that's actually a lot of copies?
I think this is going from my previous experience when I was doing the reprints. Reprints would be anywhere between 1,000 copies that you're getting reprinted, and I think for I Love You to the Moon and Back, I think we hit 100,000 copies at a time. So if someone is ordering a reprint, they're ordering like a specific print run of like a specific number. And generally speaking, if it was 1,000, I would say that's quite small.
Yeah.
Just because you've got to take into account the amount of money it takes to even produce that book. And so if you're only doing a print run of 1,000, is it actually worth it? You've got to think about cost in terms of paper, like the amount we're paying a certain amount per book. And so you've got to think like cost in terms of paper. You've got to think about shipping costs was another big one. You've got to think about sometimes if for some reason we have to air freight it, that's going to be extremely expensive. And so you've got to make a print run that's actually going to make it worth it. 1,000 copies, I don't think I ever did. I could be wrong, but I don't think I ever did a print run that was less than that. So that would be quite small for me. And that one we'd probably be producing incredibly cheaply, like as cheaply as we can. But then with something like I Love You to the Moon and Back, I think we used to do print runs of like 40,000 at a time, which is pretty big. And then we hit a point when they were just like, we just keep reordering these every 2 months or so. Let's increase to 100,000. We might have even got to 200,000 at one point for a single print run, because we were just like, we keep doing this. We've got to, at this point, it's almost more work, just because every time you do a new print run, you've got to change a little bit about the copyright information.
Like what?
As in just a small thing like on the copyright information, because you're printing it in a different month, you've got to like at the end of I think it was oh God, I can't remember. It wasn't the edition number. There's basically a little line that says the month it was printed, what printer it's printed at, and it's one of those things that it's very specific to each publishing company.
Yeah.
So I'd be able to recognize it from I wonder if I can show you in here.
And why do you even need that? like, I always thought copywriting was just because you were like, we own the rights to this thing, but I didn't realize that it got to such.
I'm going to assume it's a legal thing. I'm going to assume that if for some reason the book needs to be recalled, you can pin it down to that specific print run.
Right, okay.
You can say it was the ones that we produced in this specific month, because if we haven't changed the information but we're doing different print runs each time, and in one of them, let's imagine, for example, we've got a print run and for some reason at the printer they've run out of ink. And instead of getting ink that we've safety tested, they go down the road and they get something new and it's got a trace amount of lead in it and it doesn't pass a safety test because of that. Or for some reason it does pass the safety test and then you find out after the fact that it needs to be recalled. You need to recall that specific print run. So we need to be able to identify this. If we've never changed the information and if we know that there are different print runs, but the month that you put on it is exactly the same for each one, you're printing 100,000 copies at a time, you've suddenly got like upwards of 400,000 in the market and you cannot pinpoint exactly which one has an ink with a lead-based product in it. Whereas if you've changed the information and you know, okay, this one shouldn't have gone out on the market because it hasn't passed a safety test, but we know exactly which print run it is, it's much easier to record it back. Or ideally, it's much easier to say, okay, this particular print run hasn't gone live yet. We need to pop the books, or we need to put the books on the shelf and we need to try it again. But if you haven't changed that, it's really, really difficult to identify exactly where that's gone.
I think that's so amazing how, like, I feel like in every industry and everything that you can do in life, you can get into there's so much detail that goes into, like, I never would have, you saying that stuff makes a lot of sense, but it makes a lot of sense because you're telling me. Like, yeah. I never would have thought about, even what you're saying about kids' books and having to safety test them.
Yeah.
I never would have thought of that.
Because especially if you're, like, it kind of depends who you're marketing to, but especially if you're marketing to like 0 to 3 years old, they're not reading it. They're like eating it and throwing it and treating it like a toy. And if you've got, there was one thing where like a lot of books have what we call a gloss laminate. A laminate cover, but I can't remember exactly what it looks like. But it's essentially like it creates a glossy cover, but it is a little bit like cling film that's kind of been put around the cover and then it's like tucked in and it's cured with a light. If you chew at it or you kind of get it wet or you work at it enough, it could turn into basically a glob of cling film, which becomes a choking hazard.
Yeah.
So tiny little things like that kind of depends who you're marketing to. But if you're marketing a toy rather than a book, then you've got to test that accordingly because you've got to think about the intended use of it.
I wonder if I'm going to ask my sisters after this to ask them if they even know that is a thing. Because, I mean, I guess, because obviously this is a different thing, but when it comes to clothes, they'll sometimes get clothes like sizes and ages bigger. So like, they'll go into them, just roll up the sleeves and stuff.
Yeah.
I know books and clothes are different, but I wonder if they would be able to just get them this book because it's easier, not thinking that exactly what you just said there, the book design itself, like the physical product.
Yeah.
Different.
It's a really interesting one because like you wouldn't ordinarily think about it too hard. And I think like things are not designed to be dangerous, especially if they're for young kids. But I think that's why it's got an age kind of restriction on it. If you think about a board game, for example, like part of the reason that something like Monopoly, I don't know, for example, would have like an age on it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is to do with like mental capacity, whether you can actually play it, but also it's got tiny little pieces in it. And if you've got like a 2-year-old, they're going to start eating.
Yeah, true.
They're going to start. So you've got things that could turn into choking hazards. I did a course on toy safety and it was fascinating because toy safety is essentially looking at things that are on the market and thinking, how could a kid hurt themselves? And there are a multitude of ways that kids can end up hurting themselves. And realizing that a lot of rules and regulations that are put in are sort of after the fact it happens because a kid has hurt themselves. Yeah. And then you have to put in a new a new rule, but it's so hard to predict.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you get a kid that you have someone's got two kids and one's older, so that kid can have certain things, but then you need to watch what they have, because then if they've got a younger sibling, what they have, the younger sibling might not have, but the kids, they run together.
Yeah. Or if you've got a case of a product being recalled because it's been deemed to be unsafe, but it's been recalled after it's gone live, so it's actually pretty difficult to get those products back.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there have been cases of kids going around to their grandparents' house and then being like, oh, your parents, when they were younger, they really liked playing with these toys. They bring the toys down from the attic. They've been recalled years ago. They're actually a massive choking hazard, but no one knows that.
Yeah, that's so true. I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
So, do you still read a lot now then?
No.
Oh, do you not know?
Not at all. No. It's really funny. I think that I really think that being at university sort of killed my love for sitting and actually reading, which is sad. I know I got really into audiobooks for a while, so I still think that counts as reading. Some people disagree with me, but I really got into audiobooks for a while because that was the best way that I could actually enjoy reading. But sitting and just reading a book, I hit a point where I really couldn't do it without falling asleep, because I think that's like what happened at university. I'd be sitting at really late at night trying to get through this thing, fighting the urge to just fall asleep because I was so tired and so stressed. And it's hard to break, even this many years on, I think it's hard to break that association.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes do that on purpose. I got to read at night to help myself to drift off.
Yeah.
Because you get engaged in I mean, I don't really read, this always confuses me. I don't read fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the non-true story. So I always get confused between fiction and non-fiction.
Yeah.
So I don't really read a lot of stories, like Harry Potter and stuff. But even just reading whatever I read, I'm engaged in that land that's in the book.
Yeah.
So it definitely helps me switch off.
Yeah.
Do you think that, obviously with publishing, you might have an insight to this, do you think reading is something that is kind of dying off?
It was interesting in my first publishing company. I think I've been there for about a year or something, but people were saying that there was a fear that when ebooks started to become a thing, that book sales would go down.
Yeah.
And this was true probably about 9 years ago now. So,
you're the same age
8 or 9 years ago.
You're the same age as me. We're now you're oh god, that was a decade. You're a teenager and you're I was 20, early 20s.
I know. When you think about that, you're oh my god, more than 20 years ago now. But so this was true a little while ago. I don't know if it's true now, but at least at that point when ebooks were becoming a lot more popular, there was a worry that book sales would go down, and the opposite happened. Book sales went up when ebooks came on the market. And I can only assume it's because people were reading more. Some ebooks just weren't available, and it was almost that having an ebook was encouraging people to continue to read. And there were also people who just like the feeling of having a book, which I totally understand. But I think that just the fact that ebooks meant that reading was still continuing, book sales did go up. In terms of whether that's true now and whether people are still reading now, I don't really know. I think I know a lot of people who read way more than I do and seem to just be churning through books in their spare time. Whether it's in addition to doom scrolling, or whether doom scrolling is kind of bypassing that, taking over that, I don't really know.
Yeah, I wonder if reading's almost like the precursor to doom scrolling.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do both, but when I'm being more proactive, I'll be reading. And then I will read more, and then it makes me feel better. It's funny as well, working here. So when we were working at Norquay, the ski resort in Banff, I went guest services in the summer, so I was behind a desk, and it was really quiet in the summer, to be honest. And it was interesting to see my supervisor's reaction to, I could sit and read a book literally the whole day if I wasn't busy, and they didn't care, because they weren't pretending to be busy. They were if it's not busy, it's not busy, right? Mm-hmm. So they would let me read a book. But if the next person, the person sitting working with me, sitting beside me, was on their phone doing anything, even if they were reading an ebook on their phone, they weren't allowed to do that. that I was allowed to sit and read a book for as long as I wanted. So it's funny how it's just their perception of reading a book was as if you were doing something constructive as opposed to just doing scrolling on the phone. And ultimately you're both doing the same thing, which was not working.
But it's so interesting that you say that, because I think that the idea of something being constructive, because I don't struggle to read a book for a long period of time if I'm on a train or if I'm on a plane, because it feels like the most constructive thing that I can do at that time.
Yeah.
But sitting still is it feels really difficult. It feels like I'm being very overly indulgent because I could be doing something else. Audiobooks I could do whilst I was doing dishes or whilst I was, I don't know, vacuuming or something. So again, it wasn't to do with like, I need to do this thing. It was more like, how can I fill my time as constructively as possible? Whereas sitting and reading feels overindulgent. But I guess when you're at work, like, you're being paid to be there. That is, in a sense, the most constructive thing that you can do whilst you're like in the space that you're in. But I think sitting and reading just by yourself when you could while away hours doing it can feel like a poor use of your time, which is really, like, I find it really, really odd that I think the only reason my brain could like switch into, well, now you can read, was if I was traveling somewhere. I was like, well,
Can't do anything else.
this is the most constructive thing that I can say.
Yeah, no, I think, I do think that quite a lot. I am one of these people where I do prefer having a book, like a physical book. I've had ebooks and I actually do like audiobooks. I think whenever I go through periods of listening to audiobooks though, and this is just true of listening to anything, even podcasts and music, sometimes I think in our day and age now, because I have headphones, I sometimes get a bit too overstimulated with audiobooks and podcasts, because you can literally, as you were saying, like, you could do it when you're doing the dishes, vacuuming, fucking going on walking between work and your house, going to the gym. So like sometimes throughout the day, I get to the end of the day and I'm like, I feel like I've literally been listening to something in my head. And that's not just to do with like audiobooks specifically, but I now consciously try and add in more times of the day where I'm like not reading anything, I'm not listening to anything. And it's actually kind of hard. Like, I think maybe it's just the world in which we live. Like, it's actually really hard to be unplugged. Because I think I'm so used to the distraction. Like, even going to bed, I actually have to make a point of like, I'm not going to put on like a audiobook or something to fall asleep to. And then sometimes I'll be lying there and it's just like silent. And obviously, which is what we did as kids and what people have done for eternity.
Yeah.
But now I have to consciously be like, no, that's silence. It's okay.
Yeah, and be aware of the world. It's really funny that like we used to be so comfortable with just like the world around us. But I think just that we didn't have the ability to constantly distract ourselves. And so we didn't need it. And now we do. And I do understand what you're saying in that sense of like feeling plugged in and feeling closed off for the whole day. And it's a different type of isolation to, even though you could be completely isolated walking around and not listening to a headphone, but there's something about the fact that you've chosen to isolate yourself because you're plugged in the whole day, rather than walking around not with the headphones in and just being like, well, I am just by myself, but that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah, I think I think when you don't have something plugged in, like listen to anything, I find that if I'm walking, I don't have anything I'm listening to. Like, I'll obviously be thinking in my head and talking to myself a little bit, not in a crazy way, but in a way of like, this is kind of, you're asking about this podcast. I think this is also where this podcast kind of grew from that, because I was going through just periods of sobriety, nothing like crazy, just like, I think the longest one I did was 6 months. But when you're so ingrained, whether it's just the UK culture of your weekends being like quite boozy, and then you take that away, and I guess we were talking about more like listening to stuff, but then you take that away, and then you have like a lot of time where, I would fill it with reading, but then obviously you get a bit overstimulated with reading. So I was having like a bunch of time where I had nothing. And I would go walking when your thoughts just start taking over. I guess what I'm getting at here is like the boredom of those moments kind of like forced me to be a bit more creative. Because then I was like, I can't just walk around or sit around and listen to my thoughts all day. Like, what? And it would make me start to think, be like, okay, cool. Like, what would I want to spend my time doing, etc. I guess the synopsis of that was like, including those times of not being plugged into anything or reading anything made me bored. But that boredom then fed my creativity to be like, right, okay, well, let's do something now.
Yeah.
But it's,
Do you think there's a... Sorry, I interrupted you.
no, it's not good.
Do you think there's a fear of your own thoughts?
Do I think there's a fear of my own thoughts? I think yeah, at one point in my life, yeah. Now, no. Because I think I went through a period, I don't think we've ever chatted about this, but not that it's anything intense, but I went through a very intense period of like a couple of years of just like having panic attacks. Just like a lot of, now the lifestyle I was living at the time totally makes sense. So it's not in any way surprising, and it's not like a violent story. Just, yeah, I was living a lifestyle, had terrible mental health, not that much of a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point in time, I was terrified because I felt like I had no control. And before that, I didn't really understand how the brain works. Now, I'm not obviously like a doctor or anything, but just from educating myself and obviously living a better lifestyle on how to use your brain and why it works, and the fact that you have thoughts that are subconscious, and you have like intrusive thoughts, right? And sometimes you'll have intrusive thoughts and you're like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think when I was younger, that used to not necessarily scare me, but I would be like, oh, that's crazy that I would think that. But once I got older and just educate myself and started living a healthier life, I realized that your thoughts aren't necessarily what you're actually thinking. It's just this weird thing that comes into your brain and just be like, no.
Yeah.
You?
Well, I think it's just like, just building on what you've said, like I think a lot of the themes are like distracting yourself from your own thoughts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a fear of like walking around without being plugged in, because if you do, then what happens is your mind starts racing, and then you kind of want to escape that, and then you try and fill it with, I don't know, creativity, or you try and, which is a great thing, or you try and fill it with like exercise, as you would have out here, but all of that is kind of in a strive to not be sitting alone with your thoughts. It's a little bit like when you fall asleep, but I do the same thing. When you fall asleep and you're like, let's listen to an audiobook or let's listen to a podcast, because the alternative is that I have to sit here in the silence. And it's funny, when we were younger, I think we were probably more okay with doing that, because I think I wasn't quite aware of how complex like mental health can be until I got older. But I think there is a bit of a sense of like a need to distract yourself, and with things like doom scrolling and like social media now, it's much easier to do that. When we were younger, it's probably why we would turn to reading quite as easily as we did, because there is a need to distract yourself. I just think it's really interesting. I remember when I was going through university and I was very stressed at university, and I have a twin brother, so he was going through
Identical twin or just twin?
Yeah, just twin.
Okay, my mum's an identical twin, so anytime she'll tell you like,
we get asked if we're identical when people are looking at the two of us.
oh,
They'll
so
be,
you
like,
do look
facing
quite
us.
similar?
No, not even slightly.
Oh, really?
He's like 5'10", 5'11", maybe. So he's significantly taller than I am.
Right.
He's got like dark blonde hair. He's got blue eyes. He doesn't wear glasses.
Oh, wow.
He's like,
He is your brother.
yeah. We checked. Yeah, he's like, I think in terms of like face shapes, you can tell that we're related, but like, do we look alike? Not really. And people will literally be facing like him up here, me down here. People will literally be facing us and be like, so you're not identical? We're like, you're just asking if we're identical, like.
Yeah, obviously not.
Yeah, it's one of those questions that like comes out and people don't even realize, and you kind of look at them like, do you want to rethink? But he was going to university at the same time that I was, and I remember being unbelievably stressed about it and telling him that, I was trying to go out for runs and stuff to sort of calm myself down and make myself feel better. And he was like, I appreciate that, and going for a run is like good for you, but like it doesn't really distract you in the right way, because yes, you're using your body and you're kind of getting the endorphins afterwards, but you're not using your brain when you're running, and it sort of gives you the space, especially just by yourself, it gives you the space to like let those thoughts really run rampant, And he said that he got really into swing dancing when he was at university.
Oh.
But the reason for that was because it meant that he did something physically and it also engaged his brain. So it was almost the right way of distracting himself, because that was the idea, to distract ourselves so that those thoughts didn't come in.
Yeah, so true. Like I run, and I will think more when I run, but not in a negative way. Sometimes I actually like running because the thought process seems to provide more of a clarity to what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
But I also do like Muay Thai, like MMA, and that is more like your brother's swing dancing because it's coordination and movements.
Yeah.
You know, like the coach will be like, okay, you're going to do like a jab, uppercut, switch, blah, blah, whatever it might be. And so you're like having to, it's not like running where you're running and you can just like daydream. Like when you're doing the physical exercise of the swing or the Muay Thai that I was doing, you have to be engaged in the things you're thinking about, like your movement. So it's very true. Like I think for me personally, they both have had valid periods of being helpful.
Yeah. I think when I used to run, I don't run anymore. I got an injury, classic thing. Which is kind of good that I've got a 3-legged monkey, because I've only got one leg that really works. But when I would run, I have the 2 different types of runs. I'd have periods where it would just be like really clarifying and it'd feel really great. And then I would have runs where I would just like, the stress would not go away. I remember there being one run where I actually ran pretty fast because the adrenaline would not leave me. I was like, I think I was waiting for, like, I was a lot younger, I was waiting for like results or something, and I could not get it out of my head, and it almost turned into like anger. It was like one of those angry runs where you just like, the adrenaline is so rampant that you end up just like speeding up and going for it. I'm not sure it was helpful. Like I really couldn't, it wasn't clarifying. It was definitely a way of expending that energy, but the thoughts were still there. Whereas when I got into climbing, like you can only concentrate on what you're doing on the wall, which is brilliant. It was exactly the distraction that I needed in comparison to running.
Yeah, it's almost again similar to the swing dancing and the Muay Thai, because like you're having to think of movements while you're doing it. Yeah.
That's
so true. I never thought about sports and different. I've kind of always knew that. I guess I've never just put the 2 of them together. Like I've always thought like, running gives me mental clarity and the Muay Thai gives me like a distraction, but I never really thought about the fact that those 2 things are different.
Yeah.
Silly.
I hadn't either, because I don't think I'd really like vocalized it until I was talking about it with my brother. And he just made me realize that when I run, you know, I don't necessarily stop thinking. I think it's a very generalized thing to say, oh, you need to go get some exercise, you'll feel better, you know, and I'm not saying it, like, it's definitely not bad for you. I would always feel better after doing a run, but I'd never really considered that, like, sometimes doing exercise to make yourself feel better, what you're actually saying is use your brain in a different way. And choosing which sport you're going to do because of that can sometimes be really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's so true. And I think when you were asking about like having fear of thoughts, I don't think I do now, but I do resonate with what you're saying about like distracting yourself, because I don't know if it's maybe the age I'm at, certainly, where, you know, you're talking about like when you're a kid, you could read a book. I think you also just have less worries in life. Like what you were saying, like, now, when you're a kid, they feel super important, but it's more like an exam stress or your homework or this.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, at my age, which is 32, you know, I'm thinking about where should I live?
Yeah.
What job should I have?
Yeah.
Like, when should I have kids?
Yeah.
You know, I think those decisions, they just have so much more severity to them. You know, so I think when I'm sitting around not doing anything, I think I'm constantly thinking that. I'm like, am I in the right place? Am I doing the right job? Am I making enough money? You know, and I honestly do try not to think too much about the future to some regard, because I think you have to obviously be realistic there. But I think those are the thoughts that I at times appreciate escaping.
Yeah.
Because it can be overwhelming for me.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really difficult to escape, because especially I think the age we are now is, there's that pressure to be either making those decisions or having made those decisions and have some like very clear idea about what your future is going to look like. And I think given the lifestyle that we've got at the moment, it's very difficult to say exactly, you know, we're not currently in like a graduate scheme straight out of university with like a very clear trajectory and saving money to buy a house and all that. And that's what like the pressure that you get from people back home, I think is very easy to get caught up in that. I also had this like really funny realization that like I was sitting there one time thinking, oh, I was so much more productive when I was younger. You know, I was doing all this like extracurricular stuff. I was running, I was playing tennis, I was playing music, you know, and I was like, God, I was really like talented when I was younger. I was so productive. What happened? And then I realized that like all the like adulting that you do, that becomes your extracurricular when you get older, which is really frustrating and really sad. But when you think like, why am I not doing all the productive stuff that I did when I was younger? It's because that time is being taken up by just adulting and being an adult. So of course we don't have the time to be as productive.
I've never thought of that, but that is so true.
Yeah.
I honestly never thought of that. Yeah, that you had time to do activities when you were kids, but now that time is just taken up with being a grown up.
Yeah.
That's so true. You've honestly kind of blown my mind like that. I never put two together with it.
It's a really sad thought, I know, but it made me give myself a little bit more grace, I think. So I was like, it's not that I'm not productive, it's that my extracurriculars have naturally had to shift. And the extracurriculars that I did when I was younger were optional. These ones aren't. So of course I don't have the time.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, and see with regards to, so we were kind of chatting about publishing, and I was going to ask you about it, and I think this kind of ties in with what we're saying just now, like being going off and choosing what path to go in. You know, like chatting, you kind of like buzzing when you were chatting about the publishing, like obviously fond memories. Yeah, because I think we chatted about before, and you were saying how maybe it didn't give you like a certain job satisfaction that you're looking for. Like now with where we're both at, I guess, I mean, I'm not moving eminently, but how do you, you know, you also kind of said there about, you know, like having career paths. And I guess now I came in like a career path right now, but with you, how do you make that decision of the next step to take? You know, like job satisfaction, like to me, that's so important.
It's so important because you spend 8 hours of your day at least in your job, and that's not taking commuting into account. That's not taking any kind of morning or evening routine into account. And nothing makes you more aware of how long you spend at a job than being at a job that you do not like. You know, when you realize that you wouldn't choose to be there doing what you're doing, and you have not zero control, you can quit, but like to a point have very little control over your time. And it's so obvious when you're doing something that you just don't want to do, you know? And I think it's funny because like, I think I even surprised myself with how much I was like buzzing talking about publishing, because I think it was just realizing how much I learned in those 5 years that I did it, and realizing that, you know, not a lot of people have asked me about the ins and outs of it, and how much I knew, and how much I guess I still know about it. So there's something which is kind of exciting about not necessarily teaching it, but like talking about it from an informed place, but that doesn't take into account the day-to-day. And I think that's always the most important thing about a job when you're going for it. And you can never tell from an interview, especially if you're going for something where the title's very generic, like operations manager.
Yeah.
You know, you have no idea what the day-to-day is going to be. And when you start that job, and the reality is the day-to-day is that you are just sitting dealing with 100 emails that have come in overnight, you know, and that was the majority of my job, that I'd come into 100 emails every day. If I went on holiday for a week, I would come back and I would have at least 700 emails in my inbox, and I would have, it was nuts. Because when I say that to anyone else, they're like, that's insane.
That is insane.
But you'd come in and you'd have that, and you'd be expected to just deal with it by that morning, you know. And the amount that I learned about publishing and the process that you go through with it, cannot possibly prepare you for the fact that that is still what your everyday is going to be. And it's one of the most frustrating things when you're going for a job, that it's not until you start that job that you're like, okay, this is what my everyday is. And that was the thing that I struggled with the most, that, you know, no one can be happy in a job when you come back from a holiday and you have 700 emails to deal with. Like, no one can be happy doing that. When the reality of the job is that you're dealing with deadlines where in every single task you should have done it yesterday. And every single bit of feedback you get is, you should have done this faster, or you should have done this earlier, and you're already working like beyond capacity. When it got to COVID and everyone was already really struggling with the workload and kind of keeping up with things, and it got to COVID and we knew everyone was working well outside of their hours. So, you know, I'd be shocked if anyone did a 9 to 5. I think we were all logging in at 9, finishing at 7. In my case, this is nuts. In my case, because I'm a night owl, I was sending emails at 2 in the morning.
Oh my God.
Because no one was awake. And I loved it. I loved not being bothered, because one of the things that I hated was sending off an email and immediately getting a response, because I was like, no, I just wanted that out of my inbox. But sometimes I would like not work particularly well during the day, be incredibly stressed. It would get to like after hours when everyone else had logged off, and I was like, finally, I can not send this email to get an answer. I could send this email to just get it off my plate, and no one's going to respond to me. But of course, we were sending emails to publishers in China, or printers who were in China. So I wasn't the only one doing it. All the couple of us who were doing it, we were getting emails back from the printers being like, go to bed.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And, you know, I'm not saying that I was forced to do that, but I think when you realize that that's actually what the reality of your day-to-day life is, which is the most important thing, it's really hard to square yourself with the fact that you are enjoying that job, you know? So I think if anything my experience has brought me, it's that I don't want to go back into publishing. I don't want to go back into that reality, but I think I understand what I don't like in a job. And I think that is maybe not particularly clarifying in terms of what I do next, but I at least do know that that's a lifestyle that I don't want to go back to. So I think I'm in that kind of career shift moment when I'm not entirely sure, like, exactly what's coming up next, but the ideas I've had have involved not being in an office 9 till 5 and focusing on things that have more to do with being in the outdoors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're making a decision, if you don't know the exact career switch you want to make, do you then start switching to, you're like, well, what do I know I want? And I know for a fact I want to live in a place like this and be able to do activities like this. And then, you know, if you then move to that place and the career switch might organically come around because you're making a decision like, right, well, I know I want to be here.
Yeah.
And then the job opportunities might in that area pop up and you're like, oh shoot, yeah, actually that would be quite cool.
Yeah, kind of if you're more focused on like, this is the lifestyle that I know that I want.
Uh-huh.
And you know, even if the job ends up being 9 till 5, if I'm in an area where I can, in a national park where I can kind of enjoy that lifestyle, then maybe that will kind of square it with me. But I think at this point I'm more focusing on what is that everyday 9 till 5 going to look like. Is it going to be in an office, or is it going to be more outside, kind of moving around a little bit more? What the job is outside of that is kind of neither here nor there, because if there's anything I've learned, it's that you cannot tell what your lifestyle is going to be like from a job title. Yeah,
very true. Yeah, like mine is operations manager, but I literally do everything, you know, and it's kind of like sometimes if I obviously kind of usually give a generic response when people ask me what my job is, which kind of did with you when I was like, we do this. I just tell people where to go and what to do. Yeah. But like my job can literally from day to day can be completely different. I may be driving about Monday, maybe do like taking to get an oil change, but then the next day it might be processing payroll. Then the next day it may be like hiring someone in the next. It's just like you don't really.
You've got that like catch-all title to try and make it make sense, but when you come in for an interview, you're like, how can you possibly say this? What you're going to
Yeah. And I remember the job I had before I came to the UK. So I was a project coordinator, and there was a guy who got hired on just after me who was effectively supposed to do the same as me. He, but him and I have two very different mentalities when it came to our job title. I was just, because I was trying to ingratiate myself with the company, I was like, I'll do anything right. I didn't care. And I still have that mentality, and I think it's a good mentality. I was like, I will do anything they ask me to do. I didn't care how like lowly the task might be. Just because I was like, it shows that you're like a good work ethic, part of the team, blah, blah, blah. This other guy was totally the opposite of that. He, even like being like an entry level person in this new company, he would be like, that's not my job title.
Interesting.
Yeah. And at times I was kind of like, I can't even believe you're actually have the balls to, or sorry, the courage to say that.
Yeah.
And I mean, ultimately what happened was when the time came to let people go, now I'm not saying that this is exactly why, but I've assumed that this is why. As soon as the time came to like people go, because it's COVID, he was one of the first people to go. Just because I think he didn't have that.
Yeah.
He was very like, this is my job title and that's all I'm doing.
Do you think it came, because that could have come from maybe a previous experience where he was a little bit more proactive in doing everything he was asked to do and then got pigeonholed and then got lumped with those jobs that weren't his job title that he didn't want to do?
Yeah, no, that's true. I don't think, though that is very true, I don't think that was the case with this guy. He actually hadn't had any work experience.
Oh,
which, yeah, we were quite, like, we were older. Like, I was 25 and he was not that much younger than me. And no, I think it was the opposite. I think he had not had a ton of work experience and just thought, like, this is what I'm hired to do and this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Whereas at that point, I was like my third career. I'd gone from like engineering to well, not really. Maybe like my second career, go from engineering to something kind of random and then to construction. So I already had that like kind of ducking and diving, like just like doing a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's just that he came from that, but I mean, going back to job satisfaction, like I had the same thing with that job. So that job, the company was actually amazing.
Mm-hmm.
The people I worked with were really good. But there's exactly what you say, like the day-to-day work itself was mind numbing. So it was construction. So it was like all to do with, you know, like building materials and like doors and dimensions and, you know, all this stuff. And I literally could not have given less of it to it. And I feel bad saying that, because again, like, it's no, like the company were amazing to me. Like they put me through a bunch of training. And when I left, they didn't make me repay, which I actually was supposed to do. And yeah, again, the people were amazing, but repeat myself now, but the actual day-to-day of what I was doing and engaging in was the shittest thing for me at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, even though like everything else was sweet and I was getting paid okay, I just couldn't get past that.
Yeah.
And I also like remember sitting at my desk and it was kind of one of those environments where you had to be busy. You had to be, I was like in a open plan office. So sometimes though you literally have nothing to do. There's nothing to do. And I would like just be clicking from one screen to the next and opening an Excel file. And I remember just being like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I can't do this for 4 years of my life.
Do you want to, is that when you're like, why am I here?
Yeah, it was.
Why can't I just go home? Or when you've got the opposite and you're so busy that you don't even know where to start and you're in that like freeze kind of feeling of like, I don't even know what to do here. And then you've got pressure coming down on you of like, why are you not doing anything? You're like, because you've given me an inconceivable amount of things to do. And I think it's funny because it makes me think about job interviews. That like, you know how job interviews are like, I've never hired someone, but I just think they are bullshit. I have no idea how else to describe it. Like the majority of the ones that you do. And actually, even though I ended up having a really stressful time at this company, the best job interview I ever had was at my last publishing company, the children's publishing one, where the interview wasn't any of the generic questions of like, name a time that you've had difficulty and how you overcame it or something like that. She sat me down and she said, I want to explain exactly what we do every day. She's like, in the morning we do this, in the afternoon we do this. You know, it wasn't quite as specific as in the morning you're going to get over 100 emails and you need to deal with it. But it was saying like, in the morning we normally have emails from our printers because that's when we're still awake. So we try and just get through those as quickly as possible. In the afternoon, that's when we'll do invoices because it's a bit of a longer task, because, you know, we don't want to take away from the time that we had talking to printers in the morning, so we'll do that in the afternoon. But she went through what they do every day, but she also said to me, can you explain your day-to-day work at your current job and exactly what you do from the time you come in to the time that you leave?
Yeah.
And anything that I said that she didn't quite understand, she'd make me stop and be like, okay, explain that to me. And it was such a good interview. It was so much better than any other interview I've had, because any other interview the questions were really generic. And I remember the publishing company before that, I got asked what I think was the stupidest question you can get asked in an interview, which was, what skills do you have that you think would make you perfect for this specific job? And I looked at him and I said, I don't know. I've never done this job. And he was like, yeah, I did. I was like, I don't know. I've never done this job. And he was like, but really think about it. What do you think could make you good for this job? I've never even worked in publishing before. He knew that. He'd seen my CV. And I was like, I felt like I was being backed into a corner. And I sort of said to him, look, I could tell you that because of this, I'm very organised and I'm good at answering things in a timely manner. But I don't know if that's good for this job because I've never done it. Or I could tell you this, but I don't know if that... Or I could look at the job description and kind of bullshit you and say, well, clearly you do this and I'm good at that. And clearly you do this and I'm good at that. But you could end up looking and be like, well, no, that's not what the job is at all.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how to answer that question. And he looked at me afterwards and he was like, wow, thanks. That was a really honest answer. And I was like, what did you expect me to say? I thought it was the dumbest question in the world, because I was like, honestly, like, I'm happy that I was that bold with him, and I did end up getting the job, which was great. But I remember sitting there going, the one thing that I do not know, given the interview and given the job description, is what the job is like. That's like the main frustration of like the world of work, especially when you're going into a corporate company. And so sitting there and asking me what would make me good for this job, I was like, until I'm here, I have no idea. Mm. And whereas in comparison, going into this job at the second publishing company I was at, that one of the first things that she did was explain what my day-to-day would be. And I was like, that's brilliant, because that's the one thing that I could not know until I arrived. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know how I got into this, but I think it's like just talking about things like job satisfaction, you know, it's interesting because, yeah, again, until you're actually there, how on earth do you know? Mm. And this led on to something that you said, and I think it was
well, I was talking about just like trying to maybe like switch careers. I mean, you don't know what career it is. Like if you know something else in your life that you do know that you want, kind of like fall on that path, and then maybe like the career switch along the way will go.
I think it was you talking about the like how mind numbing it was. Okay. You're sitting there and like
I was like, I don't know how people do this for 4 years.
Yeah.
I actually remember having that thought.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't do this for.
I think you need to kind of care about what you're doing. Yeah. That's like when you said, like, I know it's a harsh thing to say that like you could not give less of a shit about it, but like when you're there going like, on top of how mind numbing this is, I don't care about the outcome. And you're inexplicably surrounded by people where you're like, they care. And how? Do they care?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, yeah.
You know, are they hiding it?
I don't know, like I sometimes think that, I don't know, but I do think that, which is, do they care? And if they don't care, how can they say it? Yeah, how can they just do it day in and day out? And I think the reason that I think that way, and I know what it is because when I was going through that 2 years of having like panic attacks, blah, 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 it drastically shifted my perspective on life in the sense of I was just like to get like a little bit more context into, because I was having these panic attacks, I didn't know what they were at the beginning. So I thought I was having like many heart attacks all the time.
Oh God.
Yeah. So I say that just to say that therefore I kind of shifted my, once I like got out of this like weird phase of life, because I had these like moments of, so I would have these moments where I thought I was having a heart attack, I thought I was dying, right? That sounds super dramatic, and it is super dramatic, but
if you don't know what it is and it's a physical reaction, like, I can understand.
So what that did though was when I came out of that, it had like shifted my perspective of like, I actually at times throughout that process thought I was actually dying, right? Sounds really dramatic, and it's kind of mental to say out loud, but what I'm getting at is it therefore completely shifted that perspective of like, okay, I'm not dying, obviously, at the age of 25. And it made me be like, what do I want to do every day?
Yeah.
Now that I've got this new lease of life, it's just totally crazy to say out loud because, again, the lifestyle I was living, it took sense. I was going to do this thing, but it definitely made me think, like, what do I want to do with my life? And it totally changed my whole life. Just get a career and a job and work it. Because I was like, you could die tomorrow. Like, obviously, I don't think we will, but I did get to the point where I was like, if I was, now this is kind of fatalistic, but I was like, if I was to die tomorrow, would I look back and be like, I did what I wanted to do?
Yeah.
And at that point in time, the answer was no.
Yeah.
You know, I'd done what I'd left school, kind of like fumbled around, to be honest. And then I got an apprenticeship in engineering, which I didn't really enjoy, but it was my dad's company. So it was like something to fall back on, as a lot of people say. And I remember at that time being like, if I was, again, super dramatic here, about to die tomorrow, like, I wouldn't have looked back that on, like, I enjoyed any of what I did. Yeah. So anytime I made a decision, whether it was like the next career move or moving to Canada or whatever it is, like, that's my thought process. And I was like, do I actually enjoy it? Like, will I look back and be like, I'm glad I spent like 3 or 4 years working for an outdoor adventure company or whatever the thing may be.
I think, I don't know if you'll agree with me here, but I think that the way that people talk about their careers in the UK, it makes it sound like quite a casual thing. Yeah, again, like going back to what we said quite a few times, it doesn't talk about the day-to-day. But like, oh yeah, I worked in this thing for 40 years, and you never take into account that you can actually be so anxious and so depressed in a job that it gives you that physical reaction, you know, and it really does shift you, and it makes you think, I need to do something where I'm not feeling like I'm dying, you know. And again, it does sound kind of dramatic, but I think that, I don't know if you'll agree with me this, but I think complacency in a job, even if it doesn't give you the same panic attacks that maybe you experienced or that I've experienced in a job, but I think complacency in a job can be one of the most dangerous things, because it won't give you that drive to think, I do need to be happy and excited in my day-to-day, because my job is my day-to-day. Because I often think about people in England where, like, every time I've asked them how do they feel in their job, or like, how's their job going, they're like, yeah, it's fine. Every time, yeah, it's fine. Like, you're never going to leave this.
Yeah.
Because fair enough, you're not at the point where you're like, this has to change or I'm going to get severely unwell.
Yeah.
Which is good. But you're also not at the point where you're like, something's got to give because I'm bored.
Yeah.
Not that fulfilled.
Have you heard of I've actually forgot the term of this actual thing, but I'll describe it, and I've definitely talked about this before, but there's this thing called, like, it's called like being comfortably numb. There's like an actual term for it, but what it is it's when your job and your life and your situation is not that bad. It's also, it's kind of like you're in a good position, like your job's okay, you get paid okay, your boss is okay. You know, like, yes, it's like little things here and there, but it's not bad enough they would actually force you to get to a better place. So I'm kind of butchering it, but yeah, the whole philosophy is the fact that you're comfortably not numb, but ironically, if your situation was worse, it would be better for you because it would force you to change.
Never had that.
I'll send it to you. Like, I'll send you the actual snippet of the YouTube thing that I saw, because it's way better explanation that I've given it. But yeah, so the idea is that people are just, it's never bad enough that they need to make a change, so they just kind of like coast through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if your situation was actually worse, it would force you to be in a better position because you're like, I cannot do this anymore, and you end up taking like a step up. I'll send you the video of it, because the way this guy explains it, it's way better.
But I think that's exactly kind of what I'm getting at here. And I've never heard that as a term before.
Yeah.
It's like, I think I was talking to my friend about how obviously I did such a dramatic shift, you know, changing countries, doing a completely different career. And the way he described it to me is he knew how miserable I was, especially in the last company I was at. He was like, I think he was so miserable, you had to kind of blow it up. And that was, you might not have realized you were doing it, but that was kind of the only natural response that you could have at that time, that like, unless it's completely different, it's not going to work. And again, that like, I don't know if sometimes I feel a bit of a like jealousy for people who are in that comfortably numb stage, because they're content, exactly, and like no job is going to make you completely happy. But I think that I think going back to what we were saying, one of the fears that I have going back to England is that I've actually never been in a job in England where I was happy, which is a scary thought.
Yeah.
You know, being out here, if there's the reason why I came back for a second season was because I had never experienced a job where I was excited to go in the morning. I was such a, at that age, I was 27 when I first came back here. I turned 28 in my first season. And so 28 majority of the season. I was like, I've hit the age of 28 and I have never had a job where I was happy to go in the morning. And like the only jobs I'd had were ones where I would not want to go to bed at night because I knew that if I went to bed, I would be like one step closer to waking up in the morning and coming into work. I know. It's really sad thinking about that. But it kind of wasn't even a question in my head that I had to come back because I was like, well, I've never experienced that before and I don't want to let that go now that I've experienced it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd probably say I was similar. Like, I think I maybe went through periods of getting a new job and enjoying the newness of it.
Yeah.
But eventually the newness would wear off and then the reality would kind of settle in and you're like, okay, cool. I've stopped learning, I guess. Like, if I feel like when I'm learning, I'm always enjoying that process. But yeah, as soon as you're like, okay, now I'm just set the run of it.
Yeah.
I would be like, okay, yeah, it's going to suck.
How many months would it take for you in a new job?
I don't know, like, just to spell like a random number, but I'd probably guess like 3 to 6.
Yeah.
But then I guess it depends on how difficult the job is. Because obviously it's more difficult to take longer to learn the full entire. But this one actually, the one I put in probably took me like maybe a year or so because it was constantly evolving. Obviously with COVID, and then I was hired in at a really low level, and obviously kind of like was working my way up. Not that we're a big company, but just on working my way up with regards to more responsibility. So I think it took a long time to get bored isn't the right word, but to get comfortable with knowing that I was doing everything I could do because there was just constantly new stuff coming at me. But I think as well, kind of jumping back a little bit when you were saying about switching, obviously that's super similar to you. Like I switched and moved to Australia first and then back to the UK and then out to Canada, so switched quite a few times.
Yeah.
And the one thing I did learn though was I totally agree with you in the sense that if you know it's your career, that is the thing that's kind of giving you all like the negative mental attitude that you may have at the time. Moving and doing that big switch is probably the right thing to do. But one thing I learned when I did my first one, which was the UK to Australia, and again, it was around about that time that I was in a great space. If your negativity isn't from your work and it's actually how your brain is programmed at that point in your life, the big switch won't change anything. I learned that, like when I went to Australia.
I didn't realise you went to Australia.
Yeah, so I went to Australia I traveled for like 6 months, then I went to Australia for a year, so about a year and a half, and I wanted what we have now had, which is like, you didn't enjoy your job, you make a switch, and it's sweet.
Yeah.
At that point in time, that's what I did, but it wasn't my job that was the issue, it was me that was the issue. So I was just then in a foreign country with the same problems.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, no, so that's the only thing I in my experience is, as long as you know it's your job, it's definitely the right thing to do. But if it's you, then you're just you're just taking your problems with you.
So why did the switch to Canada help?
Yeah, because at that point I wasn't. So the whole, by the time I'd done my whole trip to Australia and then got back, I actually was in a much better. So when I went to Australia, I was moving there to escape my mind. Now, I didn't think about this at the time. I thought I was escaping the life. I was living and all that stuff, but it was my mindset at the time that was the issue. So when I moved, my mindset went with me. Now, obviously, in the time I spent away and then went back, I corrected it. So when I came to Canada, Canada wasn't me moving to Canada to escape anything. I was just moving to Canada because I honestly wanted to. I mean, we were obviously talking about jobs there, so I did want to change career, but I moved to Canada with a positive attitude. So therefore, yeah, it was just different. I was just more excited to.
Yeah. What did you do to make that mental switch?
A lot of really simple stuff, stopped doing some of the extracurricular activities I was doing on nights out. Was a big one. Stop drinking completely was actually a big one. Yeah, honestly, it was kind of as simple as that. It was as simple as stopping habits specifically that were clearly negative.
Yeah.
And kind of snapping myself out of my routine and bubble a little bit. You know, because you have friends that you grow up with, and this is nothing about my specific friends, by the way, obviously. But like you have people that you grow up with and a lifestyle that you create as you grow up.
Yeah.
And you can decide to stop doing those things, but if your friends are all still doing it, it's hard if you don't have the discipline to be like, I'm not gonna. Because there would be days where like they're like, oh, hey, we're gonna go do this thing, and I'd be like, I don't want to do that. But then they're my best mates, and they're all going something like, well, I'll just go. I won't do the thing, but I'll just go with you to the place. And then you know you have fun with your friends, and you kind of like you let go of the well, it's probably okay.
You
and
get
then,
caught up in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving across. Now, it was obviously kind of literally to the other side of the world. While it was maybe not the easiest way to do that switch, it worked in the end. It was kind of brutal because then you're just alone trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I can't even remember. I kind of like went on a bit of a ramble there. But yeah, so long story short, I just needed to stop the habits and get out of the bubble. And then when I went back, and I was away for long enough that by the time I got back, I was very comfortable with being like that. It's cool. Like I've spent a year not doing any of these things. I'm kind of content. So,
right.
Yeah. So then when I came out to Canada, I was just in a much better place. So
interesting.
And now that you're obviously it's 5 years. You've obviously been here the exact same time as me. I mean, identical. What? So did you go home to the UK? I didn't realize this. I know you'd gone back, but did you? It sounds like you went back for like more than just a holiday.
I would go back. I've been back once a year every year since I've been out here. The first time I went back was, I think it was most of the summer that I was back, and then that was when I was applying for the first working holiday that I got. And I was working in England, so I was working at the Snow Zone in Milton Keynes.
Oh,
I was instructing.
That's funny.
Yeah, I was like, this is I arrived at a time when they really needed instructors. So it was one of those things where I sent off the application, and then like I think that evening I got an email response being like, can you come in for an interview tomorrow? Because they were like desperate. So that was easy. But yeah, I did that, and then the next year I came back. I worked for a company called Jobs 22, which was sort of just on the phones all day. It was one of those things where I was like, I just need a fixed term contract. And needed some money coming in, because usually, how often have you been back?
So recently, kind of regularly. So I didn't go back for 4 years, and then I had 2 long weekends, 3 weeks apart, because I had 2 weddings that I had to go to. And then this, which was last year, and then this year I went back for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So kind of like recently quite a bit, but at the beginning, like not.
Yeah, not very much. In terms of things, I think. Especially when did you know you were going for PR?
The beginning of, I think it was the beginning of this year. It's kind of funny. I honestly, like, the years have now blurred, but I think it was the beginning of this year, I think. Pretty sure that's when I handed it all out.
Okay, but the process, because that's when you handed it in.
Oh yeah, when did I guess like probably like a couple of years.
Years in.
Last couple of years, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I guess I came here with the mentality that I was always going to do it, but then I got so like what we were chatting about right at the beginning. And even now I still have it. I still have the tear in me between coming and going. Like I miss my family a lot. I miss friends a lot.
Yeah.
You know, Bam's obviously a really transient place, so I think that has kind of always like played a little part of me wanting this. Like, I'm so sorry, rambling there, but I guess. Even though I was always intending on doing it, I don't think I was ever like 100% certain. It was always kind of like, well, I might as well do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like I never really committed to I was just saying, I might as well do it. I've been here long enough. I've got the points, like.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of the reason why I was like, I don't know if this is true, but maybe part of the reason I was going back a little bit more often than you was because I was never even certain how many seasons I was going to do. I had a friend once make a comment of like, I went out, I can't remember which one it was. I went out and I was like, I'm pretty sure it's going to be my last season. She was like, you have said that every year.
I know.
But I think that's the reason I was coming and going quite as much, is because it was never like 5 years almost just happened, you know? It was, and I would go back for a slightly more protracted period of time because I'm assuming you're going to agree with me here because everyone does, but you know, when you go back, it's not a holiday.
No.
So you go back and it is just like a mental cross-country, like, travel, but like just between friends who are still living their everyday lives. So you're slotting into theirs and you are just going in like ape shit, going around the country, just trying to like see everyone. And so when I went back, both summers for my first 2 seasons, I was getting a fixed term contract on like a shorter job, like to bring money in so that I could see everyone. I didn't make savings. I didn't come back with money from those jobs. It was more that those jobs were funding that lifestyle where I was just traveling back and forth along, like, across the country just to make sure I caught up with everyone.
Yeah.
And then it was after that I got the job at Beaverada. And so...
I totally forgot this. You were for a guide.
Yeah. Because I was instructing in the winter and then guiding in the summer. And it was my 3rd season that I got the job in the summer. And I was like, well, I don't... There's no reason to go home at that point. Like, I've actually got this summer job here, which is really fun. And so I went back for a month at that point. I think each year that I was working, like first 2 years I was working at Beaverada, I was going back in October and just spending a month in the UK, which honestly is a very long time to be spending somewhere, especially when you're not working.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what people who don't live in, like, travel between 2 countries, I think what they don't understand is that you spend so much money when you go back.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's not even just the flight back. Honestly, the flight is the easy part. You book that early enough in advance, that's the bit you don't need to consider. But when you go back, you're not going to sit at home for 6 weeks or for 4 weeks doing nothing. Otherwise, there's no point you going back. You're going to be traveling and seeing your friends. You're going to be seeing your family. When you see your friends, they're going to be wanting to do activities. You've got weddings, things like that. Like, everything kind of racks up, and then you don't have money coming in. And the money that you maybe would have saved up is in Canadian dollars. So that doesn't go particularly far in the UK. And so, yeah, I kept going back and forth just because it was never certain exactly how many years I was going to spend out here. But it was for less and less time when I got the summer job here. And I think that was when, especially going back there, that was when it kind of hit me that I haven't just been doing seasonal work. I have created a life out here. So that's one of the really hard things about going back, kind of making that realization. But yeah, I think, like, even though I've been out here the same amount of time as you, PR was one of those things that was in the back of my head of like, I could go for it. I'm not entirely sure how much I want to commit to it. And having more than one passport, I always had the option of staying out here without going for it.
Have you got a Canadian passport?
No. I've got
Obviously, sorry,
I've got UK, US, Australian.
Right, keep down.
Yeah, I know. I'm quite lucky. So I'm on the 2nd year of my Australian working holiday. So, and I was on a student visa on my UK one in my first year. So UK student visa, 2 year working holiday UK, 2 year working holiday Australian. That's how I've been out here as long as I have.
Yeah, the whole time, yeah. Damn. And do you, like, how do you now, like, so, sorry, I'm just thinking, I'm actually the same, very similar to you, where, like, I have, this isn't a question, I'm just telling you, I think, frustrated my friends with how often I've told them I'm going home.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the last time I actually did go home for the holiday, I specifically apologized to some of my mates, not in a like funny way, but I was like, I'm honestly like, I'm not telling you I'm moving anymore, because they still ask me, they'd be like, oh, like, when do you think you're coming back? And now I'm just like, I would like to, but I'm not going to tell you that it's happening. because I would be like, yeah, next, I would get specific. I'd be like, yeah, like I'm going to do one more winter season and then I'll see you next spring. Like 3 years ago.
Yep.
So like with some of my mates, and I think it's because, and I think you'll get this, and they may not have got it, where like, I honestly believed it at the time. I genuinely thought that was going to happen. And then, you know, some season passes and then something has come up. Now, the last couple of years it's been that I've obviously got a girlfriend now.
Yeah.
Which is honestly kind of like a part of the reason why I went for PR as well, because of that.
Yeah.
The obviousness of just being like, okay, cool, we want to stay together. The easiest way is, I'm already here, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I was kind of side tangent there, but what I was going to ask you was, now that you look back on, like, now that you know you're leaving, right, and you look back in the entirety of, like, the time of it, how do you, like, look back on it, like you said?
Oh, so that's a really good question, because the reason that I didn't want to go for PR, and I'll be honest, I sent, you know, Holly, the immigration consultant, I emailed her like a couple of days ago being like, do I still have options? Let me know. She hasn't got back to me, but I know that like, I got one more year on because the UK IEC you can get 3 years now, so I know I could activate that last year. I'm still leaving a little bit open there. But the reason that I didn't go for PR is because talking about just lifestyle and job satisfaction and stuff, I did not want to be, at least in my first few seasons, I didn't want to be out in Canada doing a job that I could do in the UK. Because I didn't want to be sitting here knowing that all of the jobs I've done in the UK made me miserable, and sitting here equally as miserable, but in a different, but for the sake of staying out here for longer. You know, I was like, well, all of the people that I miss are in the UK. If I'm doing a job that I could do back there, I might as well go back there and at least have the support system that I'm used to. Not saying I don't have a support system out here, but it's different. It's not your family. And so when I was thinking about like, okay, if my journey in Canada is going to come to an end after 5 years, I kind of want to look at it as this amazing, very specifically like Canadian adventure where I could only do stuff out here that I couldn't do in England. And so that was kind of my main thing. Do I want to spend my time going PR in a job that I hate, that I don't want to do? Or do I want to spend my time enjoying my time out here and be able to go back and say, I spent 5 years instructing and 3 years guiding on top of that in the most beautiful, like literally the most beautiful place in the world. And in a place where, again, I worked at Norquay for 5 years, and when I was guiding for the last 3, we would be on the summit of Norquay, or on the ridgeline at least, and I got asked every time I was up there, I got asked, does this view ever get old? I was like, it doesn't.
No.
I've been in the same workplace for 5 years, and it doesn't get old. I'd still get that like pinch me kind of buzzing feeling when I'd be on like the east summit of Norquay looking out over Banff, looking at Rundle and being like, and it would be like a clear day, HD views, no smoke, like, and I'd just be there like with a group being like, I don't think I can stress enough to you, this is the best, like one of the best views I've ever seen out here. It's like, it doesn't get better than this, and I've been here for 5 years, you know? So that was kind of what I wanted. I was like, I don't want to be, one of the things that frustrated me the most when I was working in an office in England was it would be one of the like 2 nice days of the entire year, and I'd be stuck inside. It would be like a really sunny day outside, and we'd be sitting there in the office, and I'd look around just like, this is wrong. We should do this. It's ridiculous. And so I didn't want to be in Canada on like POW day and not be able to go and get my skis on, or like, even if it's a POW day and you're like stuck on the carpet, even then you're still just like, well, I still get to do a couple of laps at lunchtime or after I'm done, you know, and or like really, really nice day outside and I get to guide, I get to, you know, hike, I get to be on the summit. I'm not stuck inside thinking. And I didn't want to be in Canada, again, in the most beautiful place in the world, and be inside looking outside like I was in the UK, being like, what am I here?
Yeah.
You know? So that was that's kind of how I'm looking back on the last 5 years. Like, if I'd wanted to go for PR, I probably would have had to do something that I didn't like as much. And it would have been for that longer term goal. And maybe I'll get back to England and think, God, why didn't I do that? But I can at least rest safe in the knowledge that I made sure that my job satisfaction out here for the last 5 years was the best it possibly could have been.
Yeah.
I can think I can hand on heart say that I absolutely did that.
I was just thinking when you were saying that, when you were talking about the views and talking about like this is as good as it gets, I was also thinking like you've set the bar really high for your own job satisfaction.
Yeah.
I mean, really, which is maybe a good thing though, because you'll always have it as a point of reference.
Yeah.
Hopefully in a positive sense, in the fact that you'll be like, I need to get back to it, that or like equivalent, like
As close as I can get, yeah.
So I think if you have that experience of, looking back and being like, I was at the top of my mind and this is the best job satisfaction I've ever had.
Yeah.
Then when you're working something super mundane, whatever it may be, you will have in your head like, I can't do this. Like I need to get back to either a good or a bad thing for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'll be a good thing, obviously.
I think it will, like, because there were some aspects of the job where, like, the fact that both jobs I did were weather dependent was really, really challenging when you're, like, obviously we didn't have a great season at Orkway last year. And when we were at the start of the season and there was no snow and no one was getting any money in, and I was sitting there like, this is not something I can sustainably do. The Farada didn't happen quite as often, but when we were up there and, you know, a day would be cancelled because of lightning. And just the notion that, like, when you work in those jobs, everything is dependent on the weather. And it's not just, you know, oh, it's raining, it's not going to be as good a day. In some instances, it was, we have no work for you because we haven't had enough snow, or in the summer because we had too much snow, you know, and stuff as simple as that. I was like, this is something that I could change, and that probably should change, that you just need that stability. But you're absolutely right, you know, you can take that too far and be in a job where you're stuck inside on a really nice day. If I could find some kind of hybrid between the two, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, I think as well, like we were chatting about the fact, like you were torn in the beginning between people, like having stuff in the UK that you want and stuff in Canada that you want, and like there's obviously a tier to go between the two. And I think it's kind of similar with regards to like jobs as well. Sure, mine kind of went a wee bit blank there, but I think with jobs with regards to, or not jobs, sorry, but just with regards to like life and being like at the point that you're at now, I want to like sit down and write everything down and be like, what are my priorities now? Because is it complete job satisfaction, or is it even like more mundane, not mundane necessarily, but more like grown up stuff? Like we live in Banff, which is beautiful, right? But it's super expensive to live here. And if you realistically want to buy a house, which I would like to do, I don't think it's unfeasible, but it's probably not going to be anytime soon, and it's probably going to cost you like a lot of money. And what do you get for that money? Yeah. So like I'm now at that point where like wanting to sit down and just at the point in life and just write everything down and be like, and what are my priorities? Like what do I actually want? Like where do I want to go?
Yeah.
You know, and if it is to own my own house that has a garden and a garage and this and that, like unfortunately, Banff's probably not going to be that place. And I think I was trying to tie that into what you were saying about the job satisfaction, and you were saying about the weather being a factor and you actually getting work. You know, I would probably be the same, and maybe I don't know if this is what you were insinuating, but like I would probably rather have a job where like I know exactly what get paid. I mean, I have that job now.
Yeah.
Every paycheck, I know what get paid.
Yeah.
Doesn't change with the weather. Doesn't change for any factor at all, really.
Yeah.
You know, which I think at my age anyway is like a priority. Like I don't want to be.
Yeah, I think at the point I am now, I want to make it a priority, because that was what I had in England. And actually, I think, you know, we were saying before, the comfortably numb, like part of the reason that I wasn't was because I was like publishing. I was in academic administration before that. But the jobs that I had are publishing, particularly, they are notoriously badly paid.
Oh,
and the funny thing is, notoriously badly paid, but the hub for academic publishing is Oxford in the UK, and the hub for trade publishing, which is fiction, is London. Those are probably the two most expensive cities that you can live in England. And the amount that you're paid, like it, I don't know if it's the worst paid job, but there was a survey that went around the year that I stopped, that I got out of publishing, the survey that went around where people were encouraged to put in the amount that they earned at their publishing company. And there was a design assistant at a publishing company in London back in 2020 who was on full-time, was on 17k, which is approximately what you'd earn if you were like stacking charts at Tesco.
Yeah.
You know, and again, working in publishing, I can guarantee they weren't working 9 till 5. They were probably starting at 8:30, finishing at 7, you know? And so one of the things that made me not feel that like bad about coming out here and even having paychecks that weren't particularly stable and having paychecks that weren't particularly big was the fact that I was like, well, I was working paycheck to paycheck back then anyway. I knew what I was getting each month, but most of it was going on rent in London. And again, working paycheck to paycheck, I was like, it doesn't make much of a difference when I come out here. So I want it to be more of a priority for sure. I want to think about like, what would it be like if I had a job that I enjoyed more, where also the paycheck coming in was something that I could feasibly, comfortably live off. Realistically, I've never had that in a job. It was one of the reasons that coming out here was like not that difficult decision. I wasn't losing that much compared to being back in the UK.
Yeah, that's true. I remember when Gord, your recently old boss, but my old boss, he said that to me because I did have a salary job in the UK and it wasn't a ton of money, but I remember him telling me that. He was like, you know, like it's going to be like a jump down. And I was actually kind of naive and I was like, yeah, but I'll be fine. And then I remember I came here and again, I didn't make a ton of money in the UK, but it was a salary position.
Yeah.
And I remember when I came here, I was like, oh, wow.
I
kind of made up for it because I literally at the beginning, I had like 4 jobs like, for the first like couple of months. Like, honestly, I think maybe the first half of a year until I got like just progressively got my pay up.
Yeah.
But it definitely is a job. Like, I think that's for people like you and I who have already taken the risk and moved. And even though me saying that, like, I still did it and I'm glad I did it. And I think for people like you and I who have done a jump, whether it's career or country or both or whatever, and it's panned out, it's easier for us then to think about doing that again, i.e. for you to go back to the UK or me to go back to the UK or me to go anywhere.
That's really true.
Whereas my mates now who have never done that,
yeah,
because I now get paid, like I probably get paid enough to be in a situation where like, yeah, I'm probably slightly comfortable, but my mates who are in the same position as me but have never jumped, their idea of like, I'm going to give up this amount of money and like what, and not have any idea of what's coming in. I think it to them is way more risky. Whereas to me, because I've already done it once, you're like, okay, right, it's not ideal, but you've had the experience of it panning out.
Yeah. And it's really funny because just thinking about the number of jobs, like what were your jobs?
So manager, so the main ones. So I did a apprenticeship in engineering, which is like 5 years long. And then I traveled for 6 months. And then when I was in Australia, I did kind of, even the whole time I lived there, the longest job I had, which was 6 months, was like a project assistant.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, yeah, I was just an assistant, effectively like an admin person. Then when I went from there to the UK, I got a job as a project coordinator in construction.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I came to Canada, I was snowboard instructor, but then I worked at the liquor store. I had a construction job. I was snow shoveling.
Right.
Yeah. And then I kind of actually got the job I've got now, which is, it's for an outdoor venture company, but I wasn't an operations manager. I was like admin assistant and then like adventure coordinator and then some other random titles.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be like that.
So I don't know if you had the same mentality as me, but like obviously in the UK I was not paid very much at my publishing company. But coming out here, even though like it was a pay cut, but it was also, I wasn't used to shift work and I wasn't used to my position not being salaried.
Yeah.
Because I'd only ever worked salaried positions in the UK. And so realizing that you couldn't rely on the paycheck because it was entirely dependent on the hours that you worked and you didn't know what hours you got until you came in, that was very different for me. And so I don't know if you did the same thing, but when I came out here, I think it was like the first weekend that we were actually let out of quarantine.
Yeah.
I was just running around Banff with CVs, just like everything that I could, just talking to anyone and everyone and saying yes to every single job, because I didn't realize that coming out here, the pay scale you're on doesn't actually make that much of a difference if you're just not getting the hours, and we weren't getting those hours in the first little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge shift. And I had, kind of similar to you, I had 3 jobs when I first came out here, because I suddenly had that realization that like, okay, I wasn't earning a huge amount in England, but at least as soon as you sign that contract and you start working, you can rely on a lump sum coming in every single month. And suddenly not having that and realizing how hard you needed to work to subsidize that was really, really different. But I think like coming in from a salary position, both you and I probably had that same mentality of like, we're on the clock here. we gotta instantly make this work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also, like, I think our ages, I'm kind of speaking for myself, but I know we're similar.
Yeah.
I think you and I also came from like, we worked for like, I mean, at that point, so I came here when I was like 26, 27, I can't even remember, but yeah, it must have been 27 because I'm 32 now. I'd worked for 9 years maybe at that point in time, really. I mean, yeah, honestly, worked for 9 years, probably 6 or 7 of them were like actual, not like just bar jobs and stuff, like real actual work. So I think coming out here, it was the same as you. I was like, I need to work.
Yeah.
And we obviously had people that did the program with us who were younger. And on the weekends, like I'd be like, oh, I need like do like 2 of my jobs, and they'd be like, oh, go skiing. And I was like, what? How could you?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think also, and again, I wasn't making a ton of money, but once you make some money, you get some level of comfortability with that level. Then when we came out here, I was kind of used to being able to go out and buy not expensive stuff for dinner and whatever, and then come out here. And I think the younger kids who had never had a job, they were like cool with making like noodles every night for dinner.
Yeah.
Whereas, not that I wanted to be bougie, but I was like, dude, I need like
yeah. I also I realized that when I move into a new place, I don't feel comfortable in that place until I cook my first meal there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a really weird realization that like until I've
That's good fun.
been in the kitchen and actually cooked dinner, and it can't be like, I'm not like a fancy cook, but it can't be like noodles or like just the sort of thing where you're like, I just need to do something. It has to be like chopping vegetables, actually like getting your meal together. I didn't realize it until like that was the first time that I felt comfortable at 325 when I actually sat and cooked a meal. Was just like, okay, now I feel settled and I feel good here. But I think I found it, I had a bit of a weird like sentiment when I was out here, because on the one hand I was getting other jobs just to subsidize things, but I was really not okay with the feeling of giving up my ski time with my other jobs, because I'd also, like, you and I were self-funded, I'd also paid to be out here, and I was like, well, I've paid to come out and get my skiing up as good as it can be, or like get as good at skiing as I can, because I don't get that chance in the UK. I didn't start skiing till I was 24 because I didn't start it till I paid for it. And so when I paid that amount of money, I paid for the gear, I paid for the training, I was like, well, I'm definitely going to ski in my free time. My jobs are specifically for days when I've already got a shift at Norquay. So it's, you know, I come back from the ski hill and the hills are already closed.
Okay.
So I can't carry on working. So it was like I was trying to fill up as much of my working time as I could, because I was like, well, I'm not going to come out here and waste the money that I've paid, because the point of me coming out here was to ski. So it was, I had kind of both, where I was like, yeah, I need to be making up that money, but I'm also, what's the point in me being out here if every like second of free time I have, I'm working retail?
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't have that mentality, and now you're not. And when I look back, I wish I had, because I think I did miss out on more snowboarding than I could have done, or just like making it's kind of your whole philosophy of like, why come to Canada and not do what you can do in Canada? You can do in Canada that you can't do in the UK. I ski snowboard every winter season.
Yeah.
And I definitely have regretted at times looking back. I mean, I'm still here, but like just on even like other things like relationships, maybe with people that run the program that I wish I invested more into.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just like, yeah, no, but I need to work and make money. And by kind of accidental default, probably didn't make as close ties with people because when everyone was kind of like out skiing or doing something or like even going on a night out, I'd be like, really worked on.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I think it was, for me, it was maybe trying to make myself comfortable by just keeping myself busy.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like, meeting new people, being in a new place, when you have all that free time, that's what you do. You know, you hang out with people, you go and do new things.
Yeah.
And I think because obviously I look back in it and I was nervous to do that, I just filled all my time at work. Because then, I don't know.
Everyone does. It's like, especially when you don't have a salary position. And so time that you're not spending working could feasibly be time wasted. Yeah. Whereas if you're working a salary position, and you go in for your 9 to 5 and you come back and you could make a little bit of extra money, but like you've already put your time and effort into getting an amount that you know you can live off of, hopefully. So you don't feel that pressure to like go back home and work even harder, you know? And I guess it's that whole, like, it's another way of escaping from your thoughts to an extent. Yep. You're like, well, I could just like be out working. I know our first season out here was COVID and like stuff wasn't open. And for the majority of the time, I actually kind of loved it. I kind of thrived off of it. Part of it was that we had a much better COVID experience than everyone was back home. Like I felt guilty in that sense because everyone was going through that second lockdown, and I was like, "Oh, I'm having an amazing time."
Yeah.
But also because we were all forced to stay inside, we had to get comfortable with the people we were living with. So our social life was really just like hanging out after work with everyone. Mm. And unless I was doing my second job, which I only did, I think a couple days a week. I think I did it on the weekends. But you know, I wasn't spending a ton of money because like no one was really going out. So, and we were just encouraged to like hang out in a really quiet, comfortable way, which suited me incredibly well. Mm. But I also think like just going back to what you're saying about investing in like the friends that we had on Timberline, I made some great friends on Timberline. I had a really, really lovely time with them. But I think I've kind of made peace with the fact that adult friendships, adult relationships, they are a little bit different. And, you know, it could be really sad, but sometimes the person you were really, really close with, it doesn't detract from the friendship that you had, but just life happens and you maybe don't stay as close with them. And like, hopefully if and when you see them again, you pick up where you left off. You know, that's usually a sign that you have a really close friendship to begin with. But if I think about the number of jobs that I did in England where I had like a best friend, and that usually you like trauma bond through a job that you don't like, and they're like your world when you're in that job. And a lot of them I don't really talk to anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't detract from how much they meant to me back then. But I kind of saw the same thing with Timberline, that you could invest in them, but like realistically, it's a huge effort staying in contact with people who have gone in different directions, and sometimes you just don't have that time or capacity, and that's okay. You could just enjoy the fact that you were really good friends back then, or like you were still really good friends, but you maybe don't stay in contact too much.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you there. That's not what I did.
Okay.
So, and I think this is a negative thing, by the way, was what I did. And I now don't do this. But I agree with exactly what you said. And I thought that at the time, but I had the mentality of like, why bother?
Ah, interesting.
Which is really negative, and it was nothing on... It wasn't that like if I hung out with people... Now, obviously, I'm kind of being specific to people that are up at tunnel.
Yep.
Because that's just who was in our little bubble, and it was nothing on them and nothing about anything to do with them. But I just had that like mentality of, I think I'd also, because I'd lived abroad and already had like really close friends, and then you know, exactly what you say there, when you move and you don't talk to them and it's for no other reason than you're literally not in each other's space.
Yeah.
I kind of just went in with the mentality of like, I'm not going to invest in the people who aren't staying here long term. You know, I didn't think that when I was doing it, but like I now looking back on it, that's subconsciously what I did.
Yeah.
Where the people who were staying, I made a conscious effort to be close with. And the people who weren't, I was still like super cool with them, but I just didn't invest in the relationship. And I think it was negative because of what you say, where like you can still, even if it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 months, a year, you can still enjoy that time with those people, no matter how short it is, and create these deep connections.
Yeah.
I would rather do that and then never see them again, but have had a good 2 weeks or 3 months or whatever the period of time is, than what I did, which was kind of just had a little bit of a surface level experience at times.
Is it because you always, even if you didn't like, even if you didn't say it out loud or like consciously, you always knew that you were here for a little bit longer?
A little bit, yeah. And I think there also was, now not to be too negative, but I think there also was an element where I had an experience when I was younger where my close friends hadn't been there for me at a specific point in time. And I think I had subconsciously, I don't know what the word is, held on to that. So that I had this mentality of like, well, if my best friends that I've known my whole life weren't even there for me, I was a bit of a like, I'm just going to do it my own kind of mentality. Now I've realised that now, and while I still have that attitude sometimes, but like I can be very, and again, I don't think this is positive, but I can be very like cut and dry, where like if I think someone's fucking me over, I won't do like I will do this now, but I need to consciously be like, be rational, be mature, talk to the person about the thing, don't throw away a relationship for whatever. But I guess what I'm getting at is, I think the combination of having that, knowing that they weren't staying long term, which is what you were saying, but me having a little bit of bitterness to how I'd been treated by my own mates, which I don't blame them for that either.
Yeah.
Now that I'm older, created this sense within me where I was like, I'm just going to fucking kind of do my own, which is sad, but...
Yeah. Have you, I think everyone knows this phrase well. Do you know the phrase, once the trust is gone, it's gone?
I actually don't know that.
Yeah, it's something that I'd heard kind of growing up, once the trust is gone, it's gone. I don't fully believe in that, but I think the interesting thing is most people say that when it comes to like relationships, if someone's cheated on someone else, that's usually what it pertains to. But I don't think I ever like understood that except in platonic friendships, that like something can happen and it can be like totally understandable, but you can really like viscerally lose your trust in someone. And then once that happens, it just sticks with you. And I think you can rebuild the trust, but I think it takes a really, really big like thing to happen, or a big conscious effort for that. So it usually takes the other person holding themselves to account. And that can be really difficult especially if they don't really think they did anything wrong to begin with. And I think it's kind of interesting because I think, I don't know if everyone's been in this situation, but I've definitely been in situations before where feel like I've got a little bit too close to someone and then kind of been disappointed or like been hurt by that. And I think a lot of growing up, especially having adult friendships, is understanding where those boundaries necessarily need to be. And they can be very individual. I think sort of what I'm saying is that I can understand that if you've been hurt before, I can understand where you would create that boundary and where you would draw that boundary. I don't think it's necessarily a 100% negative thing.
Yeah, I think it was just that as most things in life, even with the culture that we live in, like things always seem to sway way to the extreme. And that was, I think, my reaction to what had happened to me. Like I swayed way to the extreme where I was fiercely proud of my independence.
Yeah.
You know, like I was kind of like I didn't need anyone. Yeah. Obviously my family's incredibly supportive of I actually still have. And by the way, these friends, it's one of those things where like now when I look back on it and I rationalise like what age we were, what I was like, the situation, it makes sense. But so anyway, I think what I'm now like swayed back to like the centre. But I would say like I definitely still have those moments of like someone might do something and I'll be like, yeah, well, they fucking 10 years ago they did this thing, and I need to rationally be like, you're a grown adult. Like, appreciate the situation, appreciate the weekends, don't hold that against people. And I guess there's a book that I read that kind of made me think that way, which was, I can't remember the book's name, but in it had a reference from the world's longest longitudinal study. So that is, it's like the longest study that's been spanned over years. So they started with, it was a study in happiness, and it's still going on right now.
Wow.
So it's in New York. I can't remember the name of it. I really should, but so in New York, like X number of generations ago, just say like in the 1930s, they conducted a study on happiness, and they've continued to do that study on every generation from the first person. So their kids, etc., for all the people who have wanted to participate in it. So they've got this like super long study that might be, I don't know how many years, but it's just the world's longest. And the one thing that they found in this study across all countries, or like all ethnicities, all backgrounds, all colors, all genders, all ages, is that people who got to the end of their life, the ones who were the happiest were the ones who had connection with other people. So that was like the one proven thing, that those who had a community of people throughout their life were the happiest.
Yeah.
And I remember reading about this old guy who was in it. And sometimes it's not even by design. Like sometimes, so there was this old guy in it who, he was alone, but it wasn't because he was like a mean guy or anything. It's because he didn't want to be a burden to anyone. So he never formed relationships, because he was like, he never wanted to be a burden to his kids. So he'd never really like get caught up with them, because he was like, I don't want him to look after me, I'm old, and friends and stuff like that. So he ended up, through his own niceness, being like alone, And anyway, I kind of read this, and not that I was like, this is me, but I did have that moment where I was like, this is kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then mine was in a more, to be honest, like it was a bit of a more negative context, but I was kind of like, this is kind of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of like living the whole, like I'm me and I'm independent and I can do everything I need to do by myself.
It can feel easier.
Yeah, but it ultimately leads to you being alone and sad.
Oh.
Yeah, no. So I was kind of like, I don't want to be this guy. And also I think I just had got over I think it was honestly also as simple as like, time had passed. Yeah. And I'd got over the thing and I'd rationalised it. I looked back and I was like, it wasn't. So yeah, so now my attitude is different. Like I will consciously, and this podcast has been a really cool part in that, like consciously saying yes to more things, like with people. Like I'm super comfortable in my own company.
Yep.
And now when people like ask me to do stuff, I'm just saying, yeah. I just like I'm trying to be more proactive and fostering relationships with it.
Yeah. It's interesting about how that has to be, like what you were saying, how that really has to be a conscious,
for me,
proactive effort doing it, because it can be, I think you can lull yourself into a false sense of security of thinking that you're comfortable in your own company, because again, it's just easier. It might not feel quite as exciting, but it can be so easy to just say, oh, I'm good not getting too close to that person. I'm good keeping a distance from them, because like you don't open yourself up to that same vulnerability as you would if you actually decide to invest in that relationship. But yeah, it's interesting that even like this person who you mentioned in this study had like clearly had a family and like had what you would think would be relationships that you'd invest in, and still had still been able to maintain such a distance from them because they didn't want to be a burden, or because they kind of perceived something like that. That's wow. I've never even heard of that study.
Yeah, no, I'll send it to you as well. And I think I think just, I guess, getting comfortable with what you said. I think that's the nature of like when in Rome, living in Banff with the guys, so it's transient. So it does kind of force you to adapt to that kind of lifestyle. And I think it positive is that it has, compared to some of just the people I know back home that have never moved, regardless of whether they're my friends or not.
Yeah.
Like I think you and I will probably have a natural, maybe not natural, but you now have probably like a semi-programmed ability to make friends with like strangers like a lot quicker and a lot easier than
to adapt. Yeah. It's it was interesting because my brother bought a house a few years ago. He bought it in Leeds, and when he was looking around at the area, he was really focused on the area that he had a job in and he'd spent a few years in, even though it was more expensive. And we were kind of asking whether he'd consider moving out. And one reason he was adamant that he wouldn't was because, like, no, all my friends are here.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd spent that many years kind of cultivating those friendships. And he said, I don't see the point in moving outside of this because my community's here. And I think about, you know, that a lot of the reason for going back is like community back in the UK, or at least perceived community back in the UK. It has made me think about the fact that, yeah, Banff is a really transient place, but I'm also leaving a community that I didn't realize I'd built up since being out here. And it's funny that like connection seems to be the biggest factor in happiness, kind of longevity of that happiness. I'm not saying that like if you move or if you leave, you suddenly lose that and you're not happy, but just proactively forming those connections in whatever place you're in it's funny because it is a conscious effort and it's a scary thing to do. But it can also, again, over the last 5 years, I didn't realize that that's kind of what I was forming and creating out here. And it feels equally as scary losing that.
Yeah.
Losing that. Yeah, that's tough. Adult friendships and adult relationships is a really, really interesting.
Yeah. I think as well, being like a guy, and I have chatted about this with one of my mates, where like, I think I also find that with regards to guys, I don't know if it's also kind of, this is maybe just me. I think I sometimes am like, do you want to hang out and get a coffee? And I feel weird.
Yeah.
Like, now again, this podcast is, as a total side effect to it, has actually kind of been that thing where like I've had a valid excuse to say to my mates, like, hey, do you want to sit down for like a couple hours and just chat shit?
Yeah.
Which obviously, like, I think the average normal person would just ask someone to do that. Whereas I think I have had to, through my awkwardness, had to be like, use this as an excuse.
Yeah.
Because I think just being a guy and being an adult, be like, hey, do you want to hang out? Like, I don't know why I feel like
I have
so awkward doing that.
Because I understand what you mean. I have a really weird thing that I've noticed. I don't know if it's specific to me or if it's like other people, but I've always been really amazed at people who can just make friends very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I realize that I can only really feel comfortable with someone and feel like I can fully like be myself and not feel awkward in the situation once I've had one-on-one time with them, and it has to be one-on-one time. And the funny thing is, I've had times when I've had a friend where I can pinpoint the exact conversation that we had in the exact moment that we had where I went, okay, now we're friends. Now I can sense it. And it's funny because it hasn't even been like the first time we've hung out one-on-one. It's just been like that moment where I've been like, oh, now I feel like we have a connection where I can fully be comfortable and be myself. Mm-hmm. And I've also had times where I've been like, say, in a friendship group where like I've hung out with the group as a whole, and there's always been one person in that group where I'm like, nothing against them, but we've never had that one-on-one time. Or even if we have occasionally had one-on-one time, it's never created that moment where I've been like, oh, now I feel comfortable with you, now I can be friends with you. And so even in a friendship group that I've been part of for like years, there's always been like one person where I'm like, I don't have that with you. I never have. And I don't really understand why it hasn't happened. But for me, it has to be like, it's funny that I can pinpoint like exact conversations and exact moments where I'm just like, that's when we became friends. And it's never been in a group. It's always been a bit like you're saying that like, asking someone just to go for a coffee, you know, it weirdly, if it's someone new, it feels like a strange like agenda with me where I'm like, I want to go have coffee with you because I want to try and have that kind of moment that I know that I need in order to actually be friends with you.
No, I totally agree with you. I'm exactly the same. Mm-hmm. Where like, you need that one-on-one. Yeah, you definitely need that one-on-one. God, something I was just thinking about something that you were saying there. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think being in a group, you can hang out with people all the time, but until you get just like the two of you and you just do something together,
Yeah.
I'm the exact same.
Yeah.
I know. So sorry, there was something that else I was kind of going to relate that to, but escape my memory. I think, yeah, I think with being older and like kind of getting that one-on-one time, I guess it's like you were saying about you're making like an agenda of it. And I guess the other person is like, they appreciate that I mean, now, if anyone was to be like, do you want to hang out? I would just be like, oh, they're making like kind of an effort to like build a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when now I say, yeah. So I think before I would just say no because I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. And I honestly, that was it. It wasn't that I didn't want to hang out. But then they'd be like, do you want coffee? I'm like, nah, I actually don't want coffee.
Interesting.
Whereas now that I'm older, I'm like, I actually appreciate what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like, cool. I don't actually want coffee, no, but I will like.
You wouldn't see it as like the effort. You wouldn't see like what was behind it.
Yeah.
You'd
But
just
as now I
see it
do
as,
see that. Now I'm like, I don't want a coffee, but they're asking me to hang out because they want to hang out.
yeah.
And I remember what the thing was, which was, I read this thing recently that said, and you were talking about, it's the reason I was thinking about it is because when you were talking about being in a group and there's that one person that you don't know like why you haven't like had that, you've even had one-on-one time and it's not worked.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. Like I've had it with people where sometimes it just feels like a bit surface level and you've known them for like months, if not years, and you just don't really get past it.
Yeah.
And anyway, I've read this book lately, and it's a really simple thing, but it said, to make a friend, be a friend. And I think what I took from that was like, and I guess from my experience of just traveling and meeting people and like, when I became friends, because usually it's been that they've made friends with me because I'm too awkward to be like, how do you want to be friends? And I'm like, in those relationships, like, what was it that they did that made me open up and become friends with them? And it was usually because they would be insecure with me. I'm not about me, but that is like, it may just be simple as like,
Yeah.
telling me like a story that obviously means something to them or whatever. So when I heard that like make a friend to be a friend thing or read that quote, it was like, I took it as like, how can I expect someone to be friends with me if I don't instigate the connection of like confiding? And it doesn't need to be something like mental, but like just giving them something that is clearly really actually personal to you.
Like the vulnerability.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I used to have this thing where like, this sounds really, really weird, but you know when you kind of go through phases in life and there was a point when, I don't know, you're all living in a city and everyone's just moved into a new flat and there was like a string of housewarmings that you go to, or like house parties or something when we're a bit younger. And I remember being in those kind of situations, meeting new people and being like, I have no idea what to say. We've all just been thrown into this situation. And so I came up with a series of like, I think it was a couple of questions that I'd always use because they were an instant conversation starter. And it was because it created a vulnerability. And it was really stupid. I think one of them, which was actually a pretty good one, was, who's the worst person you've ever worked with?
Oh, wow.
It was really weird. It was usually because I was working in an office job where there was like, there's always that one person. But the reason I'd ask it was that it wasn't to be like, I need to hear this and like, this is super important. It was because it would always make the person you're speaking to a little bit angry, but not like viscerally angry. It would be one of those kind of almost enjoyable moments where you just get to rant. And it would create a vulnerability. You know, it was, if someone is ranting to you about something, they are expressing a slightly heightened emotion, which means they are getting a little bit vulnerable, and then it would encourage that in you. It would be that, or like, there was one which was also, again, it would be like, I really want you to just rant about someone. One would be like, what's a name that's been ruined for you? And again, it was so much, it was a way better conversation starter than, what do you do for a job? You know, at that point, I found it happened too often that I was in a conversation with someone where it'd be like the usual, what do you do for a job? How long have you been doing it? You know, where you're talking and they're answering you, but you see their eyes just glaze over. And then they ask you the same thing and your eyes kind of glaze over and you're just like, neither of us want to be in this conversation. Both of us are finding this boring. I'm almost so concerned that what I'm going to say is boring that I'm answering it in a boring way. I'm not even, like, there was never a point when I would engage and get excited.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what creates that kind of initial connection, which is why I started opting for the opposite. I started saying, tell me about the worst person you've ever worked with, and I'd always get a fun story out of it. And I'd get someone who would, like, instead of glazing over looking at me, they would get excited. You'd see their eyes like light up. And I think it's kind of what you said, like, it's not necessarily be a friend to make a friend, but it's that same sort of thing of, if you want to make a connection, get vulnerable. It doesn't need to be trauma dump. It doesn't need to be, say, the most, like, insanely terrible thing that's happened in your life, but it could be like, show a little bit of emotion, show a little bit of grit, and maybe that's what's going to actually start a connection.
Yeah, I think similar to what you were saying about asking that question about who's the person you least like to work with.
Yeah.
I heard another one similar that says, when you start a conversation with someone, you should just ask them, you're like, so what do you do outside of work?
Mm.
Because usually they'll tell you, like, stuff that they actually, so they'll tell you something that they do outside of work, which is usually something that they enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So for, like, maybe, I never actually say this, but I do a podcast. And then that immediately gives you, like, a bunch of different things. Because you're right, like, if you ask me about work, you're like, how long have you done that? What does the day look like? Whereas if I say to you, like, oh, so, like, what do you do outside of work? Yeah, oh, well, like, actually, I do, like, I don't know, I ski, I climb, oh, sweet. And it gives you, like, a bunch of other things that you know that they're best in it.
Yeah.
So you already have a topic of conversation.
Yeah.
That is going to be engaging for at least one of you.
Yeah. And I know this sounds like, I don't want to take it to a negative space, but sometimes if someone say, oh, I really like climbing, sometimes I'd be like, obviously within a parameter, I don't want to make it like too horrible to say, but sometimes be like, can you tell me a kind of like a scary moment you've had climbing?
Yeah.
Because again, like, that leads to a story, and it leads to them getting a little bit vulnerable. Or, like, I've had so we have a little spot in our flat that we call Podcast Corner, because it's,
oh, do you?
yeah, we do actually. We've never done it, but we have, like, 2 armchairs. We have a little light that says live on air, because we think
that is so funny.
Because we kept calling it Podcast Corner, because what we would do is we would sit in these 2 armchairs and we would ask questions that were intentionally stupid, but would kind of elicit a really, like, visceral reaction. I think the first one that came up was, what is a sandwich? Which is, honestly, apparently is a really hotly debated topic.
Okay.
Of, like, is a taco a sandwich? Is a pizza an open face sandwich? I've heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
Is a sushi a sandwich? It's just really stupid things like that. And then it turned into, like, one of mine was, what is a Christmas movie? Like, I actually took up my notebook and we, like, wrote it down, like, what makes a Christmas movie, because it's the classic, like, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? And one of the ones that came up recently was, how do you see a calendar in your head? Because I'm going to go off on a weird tangent here, but inexplicably, all written calendars start on a Sunday. And as far as I'm concerned, the week starts on a Monday.
Yeah.
And this created the biggest debate. And the reason why I enjoy it is because, like, I could not get viscerally angry, but I could get, like, comically angry about it. And and we were talking about it for hours. We were talking about it for so long, with me getting, like, comically angry when I was, like, getting really mad that someone suggested that the week starts on a Sunday, because it creates that vulnerability, but it also gives you the freedom to get annoyed about something that does not matter.
Mm.
And in other places in my life, if there's something that actually makes me annoyed or upset, it's not fun. But being able to sit there with your friends and, like, again, kind of evoke a reaction where I'm asking for a little bit of heightened emotion without the consequence, but I'm just asking for vulnerability in that way. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's when connections really form. So that's when you get to the epitome of chatting shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as a byproduct of this, it's honestly I've being able to get that with people. Yeah, like even just us, like the last, like, couple hours now, like being able to have more of a passionate conversation, not necessarily passionate, but yeah,
it is passionate. I think it is a passionate
conversation.
conversation. Yeah.
And look, I appreciate you. I've just acknowledged it. I appreciate you sitting there with me for so long,
Yeah.
chatting about this. Because I remember when we like bumped up together on the hill. Like I woke up from the gym, and I remember you're like funny because not that you are funny. Sorry, that situation was funny because I think it was similar to me, which was you're one of these people where like I bump into you in town, won't see you forever, and then we'll talk for like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you're like, cool, see you later.
Yeah, you just pick up where you left off. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it makes total sense in my head that you have a little podcast corner. And is it you and Grace?
Me and Grace. It depends who comes in.
I would imagine Grace would be fantastic on a podcast.
Me and Grace, me and Jordan, who works up at Stee Hill.
Yeah.
Hours talking but it's funny that you say that, because when you said you had a podcast, I remember talking to Grace about this. I was like, I could see Richard being a really good podcast host because we keep having those moments where I was like, he's just one of those people who just pulls out conversation from whoever he's talking to. So I wasn't surprised, honestly.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. I'm a chatty Kathy, maybe as well. My mum, it's funny, my dad, and I definitely do value this more in like a work context. My dad used to honestly tell me all the time to get to the point, get to the point, stop. He said, stop, get to the point. But yeah, like, I appreciate you sitting there with me for so long. And
I appreciate it as well. Just to add to that though, you're not one of those people who sits there and just like talks about themselves for hours. I think it's a special skill that like you pull out conversation from other people. You don't just sit there and you're like, oh, we bumped into each other, now it's time to talk about me. You know what I mean? Whereas I think we've all met a number of people who are those, like, you bump into them and 30 minutes later you're just like, I haven't said a word.
Yeah. You know? I think when you're like us, and obviously again as a byproduct of doing this, where I've had people on where I think they have been like, oh yeah, but I don't want to talk the whole time. And I'm like, that's the whole point. The whole point is it's not like, if I was to ask, you're like the 31st person. So like if I was to do this 31 times, every time I was like talking the whole time, it'd be like, it doesn't really matter who's on it.
Yeah.
But I think once you notice, and I don't know if you've noticed this, that I notice that in people. Like and again, it's not a negative thing on them, but if I chat to people, sometimes I'll notice I'm like, they've not asked me a single question. And again, it is like, I think some people don't even mean it. I think it's just honestly how they communicate.
Yeah.
But I do think sometimes it's a bit like, you've not asked me a single question on. And now, to be honest, it's to my advantage because I honestly proactively, anytime I'm having a conversation with someone, know that it's always a podcast. But even in the street, I'm like always trying to be like, just practice it kind of.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So when people didn't do it before, it kind of bugged me. When people don't do it now, I'm like, sweet, I'm just going to keep asking them questions. But
yeah, no, I think I always assume it comes down to maybe a nervousness or like a discomfort.
Yeah. When
they don't quite have the social graces to be also asking questions. And I think there's something like very indulgent about doing a podcast because I know that I know you're inviting me in here so that I can talk.
Yeah,
it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting. I was at an event once where like, I can't remember how many people I spoke to, but not a single person asked me a question. And I was so frustrated at the end of it because I was just like, I have just spent so long learning about you. And every single person I've spoken to, I know that they have no interest in learning about me. So you feel like frustrated that you've given your time and energy, But it's nice that you can turn it around to like almost being like, is this someone I can talk to on my podcast? Rather than getting annoyed at it.
And even just, I agree with you. Like, I think there definitely are situations where you're like, I think most of the time people just don't know how to do it. Like, don't know conversation skills that well. I think there are times where people are self-absorbed and they literally don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I remember there was a guy who's just guy in town, his friends with him. You don't know. But he was, every time we hung out, he was doing something that I was really interested in. So I'd be like, hey, how did the thing go? And he's like, oh, it's a couple months. Every time I saw him, and he went to the gym, so I saw him quite regularly. I'd be like, how's it going? And I remember the last time I saw him, I think he's actually moved now, but maybe like a year ago I saw him, I had a conversation with him, excuse me, and it was in that moment. Now, this is like the 100th time I talked to him, but it was in that moment I had a sudden realization. I was like, you've never once asked me, like, anything that I'm doing. I was always like, oh, yeah, like, how you get on? How's that thing you're training for? How's that? Yeah. And then it was never like, and if he did ask me, it was always like, so, like, because it was the gym, like, so, we doing at the gym today? And I just remember that, I have to admit, in those moments, I was like, and now you're just kind of being a bit of a dick. Whether he means it or not.
Yeah. Do you ever have moments when you think, because you're giving them the grace, thinking maybe they don't mean it, but you have those moments where you think, I'm a better friend to you than you are to me.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And it's not even like it's not even trying to make a dig. It's not even saying like in a super negative way. It's more being like, I almost, this is going to sound condescending, but you almost like think, I think you need me more than I need you. And therefore, when I'm interacting with you, I know that I'm in like full support mode, but I'm going to manage my expectations and know that I'm not necessarily going to get the same back.
Yeah, I definitely have. Yeah. And I'll be honest, those are the times where I will make life less of an effort. Like that guy, I ended up, I think, leaving because I haven't seen him. But I remember after that, I was like, I'm not going to bother.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's kind of negative. One for them, but for you, because that person was actually a really nice person, but it just the protractedness of the conversations just eventually just wore me down.
Yeah.
And I had what you were saying there where I was just like, I'm invested more into this than you are. And I'm just not going to bother anymore.
It's tiring.
Yeah.
It gets to a point when you're like, I'm not sure I have the energy.
Yeah.
For this.
But yeah, we were like, to now jump into a more positive thing, my girlfriend Cass had her friends there. And they're all really, I actually know most of them. There's a couple of people there I didn't know. And I honestly went into it, I was like, and I was sober driver. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't drinking anything. So I was like, I'm going to use this as an excuse. And I had like, there's a couple of people there and I was just like sitting down with them. I was like, and I was just going through all these like, questions and just kept trying, like, it wasn't like it was difficult, but I think tying it all into what we were saying about, see, once you get people chatting about what they're actually interested in, it's so easy to have a conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is and they didn't really ask me that much about what I did, but I wasn't that bothered because I was just like, let's just keep this thing going.
You're practicing. You got a reason to practice.
Yeah, Cass's friend, I went to the wedding without Cass because she wasn't here. And so Cass's friend who got married, a friend that was at their wedding sent to Cass's friend, they were like, wow, that Richard guy's like really, like he's really engaged when he talks to people. And sorry, I'm laughing there because what I was, like, I don't want this to sound like I'm superficial, and I obviously do this because I have a natural inclination to want to get to help people.
Yeah.
But I obviously, when I'm in situations, especially when I don't know people, I would use it to my advantage.
Yeah.
And then they said to Cass's friend, they're like, oh, Richard guy's like really engaging. And her friend had said to them, yeah, like he does a podcast. And that person was like, that makes total sense.
I wonder if they also just never really experienced someone like properly listening when they're talking, you know, whether like whenever they'd had a conversation. I think we're all guilty of this. It was more that they were asked questions so that they could ask the other person the same question. Mm-hmm. It was like speaking to respond rather than to listen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, this is definitely like this podcast has definitely made me, I thought it was good at conversations before, but I actually kind of, not all the time, but did what you said there, were like, I would almost like ask them a question because I want to talk about a thing. Yeah, I don't think that's like necessarily negative. I think that's just human nature, but it has made me, I think, honestly care more about what people say.
That's really cool.
Yeah, which I didn't mean, and I don't mean that to, because it is a really positive thing out of it, but I didn't go into it with that intention. I did it because I had this natural inclination. I like the idea of doing it, but it has made me way more engaged and when I'm actually talking to people, because you have to listen. You can't just, again, the whole format of this is me want to get to know stuff about you that I want to learn.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to then let go of talking about yourself.
It's really interesting that you can learn that skill, because I've always been so impressed with friends that I have where I'm like, wow, I hate to say it, but you listen to me way better than I listen to you. Mm. You know, when you've got a friend who just like, you won't see them for ages and they'll be like, oh, I know you were doing that thing. Tell me more about that. talk to you, you know, and there are like certain friends I know where I'm just like, they're so unbelievably good at it, and I'm so amazed by it all the time. The fact that you can develop that,
I think you can,
like, properly and learn it.
No, what I would say is if Cass listens to this, my girlfriend will, I will so I'm not perfect. And I say that in the sense of like, I will say to Cass sometimes, more if I've got something in my mind, I'll be like, is there anything you need to chat about right now? And sometimes she'd be like, no, not really. I'll be like, right, cool. I'm probably going to talk like for a while. Like, cause I think there's been times where like I've, finished work, chat to her about a bunch of stuff, got it off my mind and then not asked her. And then later on, she's been like, oh, you never actually, she'll be like, not in a mood in a bad way, but she'll be like, I can tell something's up and shit. You never asked me how my day was. So now I will be like, how are you?
Yeah.
And this isn't every day, but if I know that I'm going to ramble, I will say like, tell me is there anything you need to chat about? And she'll either say, yeah or no, whatever. And then I'll be like, right, I'm going to talk. So please, like, if you want to talk about something, you need to bring it up because I've got this thing in my mind that I'm just going to.
Yeah, it's very self-aware.
Yeah, no, I know. And again, I'm not perfect with that. I definitely still do it. And then sometimes I'll even do it and afterwards about like 45 minutes later of me talking about you. So how did your day?
My brother said this to me before, because I've done it a couple of times. And it's become a running joke where we were driving somewhere, the drive was like 2 hours, and I had something I just needed to like talk about. And he's my twin, he's my best friend, you know, and so I was just off on one and he's sitting there listening and being great. And it got to like 5 minutes before our destination, and I go, so how have you been? And he went, no, absolutely fucking no. You cannot do that 5 minutes before we can arrive. And he's called me out on it a couple of times where he's just like, if we're going to have this big chat and it's going to be about you, then that's fine. But you cannot pretend that we can reciprocate it. You have to like actually acknowledge, okay, we're going to be talking about me, but I will dedicate time to listen to you.
Yeah. And I think it's good having people like that in your life. Like I've got 2 sisters and I could do that with both of them, where I could call them and just like, and Cass is really good as well. And I think, and even if I don't tell her in that exact conversation, I'm going to do this, I think we've had the conversation enough times that if I forget to do it, she'll be like, she'll not. But I guess what I'm saying is it's nice to have people that you can, like, yeah, they're close enough to you that you can. And there's obviously stuff, even if I were hanging out all the time, that I wouldn't necessarily tell you that I would tell Cass. Because sometimes I think in general conversations, I always try and be pretty positive, but like, life's not positive all the time. And unfortunately, by design, I guess, Cass might be that person where I kind of will moan about stuff that I probably wouldn't moan to you, so I don't imagine thinking I'm like moaning about work.
You don't have with your partner, you don't have those inhibitions. You're not supposed to, but like, your partner is the person who you can be like the most honest and authentic with, and it means that they see you at your best and they also see you at your worst. I think I've always said like relationships can like, they bring out the best in you, but they really bring out the worst in you. And I would have moments in past relationships where I was like, I don't feel good about how I've been with this person. Like, and I'm incredibly lucky that they kind of see past those moments where I was at my worst and still want to be with me and still like me, But that's kind of the whole point when you're with your friends, is even if they're really close friends, you are somewhat curating what you're showing them, what you're sharing with them. And with your partner, they like, it's the best and worst thing about a relationship. They don't get the curated version of you.
Well, look, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.